Do you know that we've had 26 murders for the year? I count them every day. 26 murders. And of those 26, 15 were by firearms. 15. Last year, they had a total of 27 murders for the entire year. But up to the end of May, this little beautiful Barbados is struggling under the weight of 26 murders, some of which you know were callous in public places, top of Baxter's Road, Sheraton Mall in broad daylight. A country does not get there overnight. And for years, we have been preaching about grappling with the issue of firearms. We've been praying, preaching, begging. We've said to the government of the day, the Democratic Labour Party, we will meet you halfway and do what it takes to rescue our country. And we were ignored. And the chickens have now come home to roost. And the Barbados Labour Party is now left to deal with their problem that should have been dealt with 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago. But I'm not complaining because we are going to get it done. We're going to get it done. And in order to make sure that that is done, we have provided the port with the necessary financials to be able to bring in new scanners to stop the guns from coming in.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Good evening. This evening, I'm usually so bright coming on the show. This one is a struggle. I was all dressed up and ready to come on Barbados, and then heard of what happened in Nelson Street. I don't know about you, but this is a bit too much. It's not my, they're not my children. This boy, whether he's, some people say he's 11 years old, I don't know the age of this child, but it's a little boy. And this is what we're hearing. We've called the down Nelson Street, people are there. They told us that the police is all over there, so we know for sure that the child was shot. Whether what has happened to the child, we don't know. But we need, yes, Sandra, it is a tearful good night. Yes, it's a tearful night. I'm not going to pretend and tell you that it's not tearful. It is a tearful one, you know. But we want to stop. I want us to pause a bit, and let's pray for this child. Let's pray for the mother, the grandmother, all the people involved. Funny enough, this was one of the homes where we dropped off toys at Christmas. You remember we were there at Christmas, and we dropped off toys based on the description of the house that we were given. It's a space, it's somewhere where we were during Christmas, and we dropped off the toy. We actually we're looking for a picture where we took up the house, and the little boy, one little boy was there peeping through the house, the door with the toy in his hand. And I thought it was so cute. And I told the person taking the picture, go back and let's take a picture of this little boy. I'm being told that it is. But, oh my Lord. Yes, Sandra, you were crying. You were crying over SHAWNATHON, but there's another shooting. There is another shooting We just can't go on as normal. There's something wrong, and we're a nation in mourning. We are a nation in mourning. We are crying for our children. The children don't feel safe. Apparently, the bullet hit him at the back of his head. And I am tired of putting up emojis. I'm tired of putting up praying hands. I'm tired of all of this. Something drastic needs to happen. Something has to change. Or how is it that somebody could do such a bad job and still have their job? You know, it's like, how could somebody do such a bad job and still have their job? This AG has done such a terrible job, and he still has his job. Let's play the national anthem of Barbados. And I haven't forgotten the prayer. Let's just wait till some more people come on, and then we're going to have a prayer together for the young man.
Sing whoa, hear my plea, oh dear. A song from my life. Rose up early this morning to the sounds of crying. Another mother shedding her tears. Oh, yeah. Why all the pain and suffering? Why all the senseless killing? Could it be that nobody cares? Oh, no. So many sons lost in the slaughter. Blood running in the streets like water. A gun in hand knows no friend, no. Warmongers selling death in my land, getting rich off the souls of we children. Can you tell me when will it end? How many more must carry this load? Oh, how many more? How many more? How many more? Before we trot down Zion Road. How many more? Sing wayo, 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 wayo. Heavenly Father, won't you hear my plea? Send a heavy hand for the country. In man, there's no solution. No. I'm begging for the children's future. Oh, Jah, drugs got them by the collar. How can we stop this mind pollution? Too many starving and too many hungry. Too many homeless souls in the city. It seems like there's no. Too many big shots and too much connections. Too many loopholes in Babylon system. But yeah, how can your children go? How many more must carry this load? How many more before we trot Zion Road? Sing with me. How many more must carry this load? How many more before we trot Zion Road? How many more? 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 My children. How many more? How many more? Won't you hear my plea? I'm down on bended knees. Oh, yeah. How many more? How many more? My children.
A single bullet shattered the silence. A man lays dead in the road. A son, a brother, a father, a friend. This is a heavy load. A single bullet shattered the silence. Now a dad in his son, with these bullet holes in the child body, you can't help but let the tears run. We say Black Lives Matter, but you take out your own black brother. You did not consider the pain it will cause. A double action revolver, premeditated murder. You pulled the trigger, a precious life was lost. When will it end? It got to end. These ugly blood stains marking up we streets. It got to end. It has to end. These brutal shootings of a young black man. A single bullet shattered the silence. Some young men are facing a tragic end. I say young lives matter. Gunshots cause neighbors to scatter. You did not consider the anguish it caused. Semi-automatic revolver. You cold-blooded murderer. Who pulled the trigger? A valued life was lost. When will it end? It got to end. These ugly blood stains marking up we street. It got to end. When will it end? These brutal shootings of a young black man. It has to end. It got to end. Oh, yeah. A single bullet shattered the silence. Pierced and ripped apart my soul. When I heard the devastating news, my whole body ran cold. A single bullet shattered the silence. This vicious blood spilling caused havoc and mayhem. This willful and selfish ending has our family in mourning. I say all lives matter. Let love be your only trigger. Let's rid ourselves of this gun disease. We all need each other to mentor our black brothers. Let's fire envy and jealousy urgently. It got to end. It has to end. These ugly blood stains marking up we street. It has to end. It got to end. These brutal shootings of a young black man. It has to end. It got to end. Ay, ay,
Folks, let's say a word of prayer for this child who is in the hospital. We have somebody there who's been talking to the family. And it is the home that we dropped off some gifts to the children, right there in front of the tamarind tree, when we were there in Christmas time. So let's say a word of prayer for this child. Father, I pray for this child as Zoe was my son. Lord, we ask you to touch his body, to touch the doctors. We thank you that there's no distance in prayer. And Lord, we send your blessings towards them, Lord, the entire family. Let there be calm. And we ask you to guide the hands of the doctors. And we thank you, oh God, that this child will come out of this hospital physically well. And we pray that all the other children, the other younger siblings that were there, that they will be made whole in their minds, their mental health, and the entire family. We thank you now. Amen. Amen. I had this is the banner that I prepared. I had prepared. Where is it? Okay, so I had to get rid of that banner. Actually, right. So this is what I was putting up tonight. The Marcia Week show and the loyal opposition pressure group joined with Barbados in sending condolences to the Chase family. That is SHAWNATHON Chase. And I was dressed sitting here, and then I saw a message come through, and I called the person who sent it. Didn't get them because I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And if it's affecting me, I don't know. I mean, this much I can imagine what, what the people in Nelson Street, there are little children that we know there. In Nelson Street, you would remember some of them would follow me all about when we went for the marches. So we called, one of the moms up there to make sure that he was okay. At least we know that that one is okay. And we just continue. I don't know. As you can see, I'm lost of words. I'm really lost of words. But I have I don't know. Barbados, I tell you something. If those of you, you feel the tears coming, cry. You've got to mourn. You got to let it out. There's a lot of mental health issues all over. Our young people are mourning. There's a little article before I bring in my first guest. Here, there's an article that I want us to just to read it quickly as she comes in. I want to read this because this is a child speaking in this article. And I saw it today. I didn't realize I would have had to read it tonight, so I didn't prepare it, but I think I'll be able to find it. In the meantime, folks, let's share. The article says this, Barbados. When children are this afraid, we must listen. There's perhaps no more sobering reality check than hearing the raw fear of a child. The words of a student living in the Ivy, St. Michael, in the neighborhood where 21-year-old Omari Jordan was gunned down in broad daylight on Monday, are not just heartbreaking, they are a siren call. I had to close up all the windows and everything because I don't feel safe anymore in Barbados. I know there are places that have a lot of crimes, but I don't feel safe no more. The secondary school student told Barbados Today when a team visited the community a day after the fatal shooting. The child says, I pray each and every single day because I just pray to the Lord to get me to school safely and back safely. I would really like to leave, like just pack up and move away if an opportunity can come to me. These are not the anxious musings of a worried adult. These are the thoughts of a young girl, a student, who should be worrying about her exams, her hobbies, friendships, not survival. Her fear, her prayers for safe passage to and from school, and her desperate wish to escape home paint a chilling picture of life in communities where violence has become an all too common backdrop. And she's not alone. For many of our nation's youth, gunfire is no longer a distant sound heard only in the headlines. It is a lived experience, forcing them to cower in their homes, mistrust their streets, and carry the heavy emotional burden of trauma before they even reach adulthood. When a young person says she wants to leave her country because she no longer feels safe, we must stop and ask ourselves, what kind of Barbados are we building? This is not just a policing issue. Yes, law enforcement must be responsive and more visible and more trusted. But beyond that, this is a societal crisis. Violence is flourishing in the cracks we've left unattended, where poverty, hopelessness, lack of opportunity, broken homes, and unchecked anger collide. Community after community, from the Ivy to the Orleans to Grisettes, has stories like these, stories of lives lost, families broken, and youth left afraid of being in the very spaces where they should feel most secure. We cannot afford to become numb. We cannot allow this fear to become the norm of another generation. It's so scary. I don't feel safe no more. The child's voice is not just a cry for help, it is a mirror, a reflection of the consequences of our collective inaction, our political indecision, our economic imbalances, and our fading sense of community. It's a long one, just a little bit more, and I'll be done. If our children do not feel safe at home, we have failed them. It is time, past time, for a unified, all hands on deck approach to saving not just lives, but the sense of security and belonging that every Barbadian child deserves. From government to schools, churches, businesses, neighborhood leaders, and parents, this is everyone's responsibility. Because if a child in Barbados has to pray just to make it home from school, then we are all in danger of losing far more than just our safety. We're losing our soul. Tonight, I welcome MARSHA Myrie and my namesake. MARSHA, welcome. Open your mic. Let me make sure I hear you.
Greetings. How are you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Not the best tonight. We had a talk today and didn't know that this would be what we would be talking about today.
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm sitting here and I'm watching what is happening in Barbados, and I don't even know the word for it. I don't know what to say. Like you, I'm lost for words. I didn't know that, we were going to get this news at the beginning of this show. And yet, as you read that article, which is also like a great place to start, we also can't give up. We can't throw our hands in the air. We can't say that, that we are not doing anything. And so I think what we are doing tonight, I'm hoping that, some family out there who needs this information, who needs the understanding, hopefully it can get them to get help, or get them closer to help for a loved one or somebody who may need it, because we can't give up, right? I mean, all the work that you do, all the work that people in the community who are not giving up do, it still counts for something. And so I think very much that's where I just want to take it tonight. So without any further ado, what I want to do tonight is to talk a little bit about the social services system in Barbados, as what I see are some of the things that we need to think about and fix, even as we address this overarching problem that we have that is happening in Barbados. I accept that this would have to go along with other things, but this is the part of the puzzle that I know best. So, it is an important piece of the puzzle. And I've been listening to the conversation over the last couple of weeks. Like you said, we're a nation in mourning. And I've been listening to all that has been said around the unfortunate drowning, around a number of things. And what I want us to do as Barbadians is to make sure that we do not fall into the trap of blaming ourselves solely for where we are. I don't think blame is going to help. So one of the things that I got here next to me is this book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. My people need to start to read. This is a book by a doctor called Dr. DeGroy. And she looks at the impact of slavery on America. And if you read this book and you think about some of what is happening in Black communities across the world, then you begin to understand that we shouldn't blame ourselves. This is the unfinished work from colonialism and the damage that has been done by colonialism. And within the Caribbean, we have a government, sets of governments that have replaced the white massa with a group of people I call the politourgeoisie. So they're not bourgeoisie because many of them come from the same communities as us. They went to the same schools as us, but they use that plantation system and they implant themselves in the system and they uphold the system to continue to punish the rest of us. And that is exactly what is happening in Barbados. So you can add this to your list, the book list. Now, what I want to do tonight is I want to talk about and think about the families in Barbados who may have young people who need help and support. Mm-hmm. Where do these young people go? This is a part of the conversation that we started around the government industrial school, and it is a part of the conversation that we have not continued or that we still don't have answers for. So the first thing I want to establish is that we have a problem in Barbados treating to children who have needs, whether they're developmental needs, trauma needs, mental health needs, mental wellness needs, and it happens. We know that after COVID, the entire mental health of the world changed. I'm not telling secrets here. We know this, right? So where does a parent or a family go to get help for a child when that child needs help?
Yes.
But even if you can find that help before the child turns 16, where can a parent go to get help for a child between, let's say, 16 and 23? Because whatever we categorize them as, that age of 16 to 23 in Barbados, if we look at the deaths, if we look at the murders, if we look at everything, that 16 to 23 age group is one that we have to pay attention to. One of the things that has happened in Barbados, and I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't happen anywhere else, it also happens in Canada. At the age of between 16 and 18, there are tiers in the way that we classify people. So for the purpose of sex, a child has reached the age of consent in Barbados at 16. I think we all know that. But the age of majority in Barbados is still 18. So according to the Minors Act is the piece of legislation that governs what we do with children in Barbados. According to the Minors Act, Cap 215, a person is a child in Barbados until they reach the age of majority, and that age of majority is attained at 18. But what happens is that if you have a family in Barbados who needs support and care for a child, and they go to, let's say, the child care board, the police, the welfare, the probation department, they will be told, well, we can't do anything because this child is an adult. That is not true. That is not true. I just read to you the laws of Barbados, right? A child is a child in Barbados until they reach the age of 18. Now, Marcia, you remember one of the things that happened after the government industrial school? We removed wandering. We needed to remove wandering. It is an old colonial archaic law. If a person has a mental health issue, you don't strip them naked and put them in a cell and forget about them. That doesn't fix them. It doesn't help. Actually, it makes it worse. So we had to get rid of wandering. We then understood that we had to fill that space. So remember the Child Protection Bill? Anybody, yes. The loyal opposition remembers the Child Protection Bill. It was dated January the 24th, 2023, right? And it said that the bill made provisions for the reform of the law on the care and protection of children, right? So we understood that we had children in Barbados who needed this care and protection. We further understand when we removed that wandering law, we could see where there was this gap. We weren't dealing with these children. Marcia, the children who are running around Barbados with guns, the children who are sitting under the trees, the children who are causing the issues in Barbados, they don't drop from the sky. They don't drop from the sky. They are part of our community. And I don't want us to believe that all of the parents don't try to help. I don't want us to believe that these are children that their communities, that their teachers have not tried to intervene with. But I want us to believe that getting help and support for a child who is given trouble in Barbados is next kin to impossible. I sit here and I say that without fear of contradiction, and especially when that child is between, like I said, 16 to 23. You go to the police tell you they don't know what to do. You go to the child care board will tell you it ain't them. You go to the welfare tell you it ain't them. You go to the probation department, they tell you it ain't them. It is very difficult to find the people who are going to help this family to deal with the situation. So, but we have this bill. You can tell me what happened to it, because I don't know, but I have my copy of it. And I want to point people to some of the sections today. And maybe this is why nothing is happening with this bill, because we just give away land in Barbados. You know better than me. We give away down in whole town. We give away there on the outskirts of town. But you know what we don't have in Barbados yet? We do not have a halfway house for children who may be too much for their families to handle. Because again, let me be honest, it happens. There are some of them who are too much for the family. They need professional care and support. But we don't have a halfway house. The child care board in Barbados is turning children onto the street without proper mechanisms when they reach 16 and they age out of child care board homes. The government industrial school does the same thing. I talk without fear of contradiction. And some of these children, it is not because their circumstances have changed. Like I said, they're just aging out of the system. So the government itself, remember one of the things that I said about this child protection bill that I did not like, is that while everybody else in Barbados can be punished for doing wrong to a child, the government cannot. So nobody can sue the government. Nobody can accuse the government of not caring for children properly, but the government can use this act to do it to the rest of us, right? Problematic. So there is no shelter. And what you have is that a lot of these children then become housing unstable, family unstable. And this is why this undercurrent that we have in Barbados, what we are now calling gang culture, is so alive and well, because the gang replaces the social services that are absent, the family that can manage, and then we end up with this environment where they become they are pulled into this undercurrent of society. Now, for the purpose of the Child Protection Bill, again, remember we said in the Minors Act, it is a person under 18. In the Child Protection Bill, it is also, child means a person who is under the age of 18. The government has a fiduciary responsibility to protect this age group, right? What is the purpose of the act? For what we are talking about tonight, I want to highlight a couple of the purposes, not all, but it's supposed to protect the welfare of a child. So if the child has needs that make it too difficult for the parent to handle, right? The state has a responsibility to the child to provide safe space, to provide care and protection for the child, to protect a child from abuse and neglect, and to ensure that the best interest of the child is given paramount consideration in all matters. I am going to ask the question, are our social services in Barbados doing that? Are they doing that? Or do we know of instances where people go into the welfare department and they are treated any kind of how? Do we know of instances where people go into the child care board and they're treated any kind of how? I mean, we talk about it when it is in the street, but when it is the people in our society with the responsibility, somehow we can't call a thing. We don't say it. I heard on this show the other day, we were talking about police officers, and it came out how much police officers in Barbados make. Now, welfare officers in Barbados and social workers operate on the Z16 to Z6 scale. That's how the civil service of Barbados is ranked. They're different scales, right? Z16, you start at the higher number is the lower scale, and you go up. The higher number then is the higher salary.
Mm-hmm.
So the average social worker and welfare officer in Barbados start making $3,401.66 a month of the taxpayers' money. In addition to that, they're classified as traveling officers, and that entitles them to at least $50,000 of an interest-free loan to buy a vehicle. So my contention, where I'm going with that is, Marcia, we should be expecting more of the social workers and the welfare officers in Barbados than we expect of the police. And why do I say that? I say that because by the time the police have to get involved, it is too late.
Mm.
The social workers and the welfare officers are the ones better positioned to help these families, to help these vulnerable children, to stop these cycles. Now, that has not been done. It has not been done. We have not been doing it. And now we are at the stage that we are at. And if you ask me what we need at this stage now, if it was something that I had to work my mind around, the first thing that I would want to do is a complete analysis of my ecosystem in terms of social services in Barbados. That's where I would start. Because if you're trying to fix a problem, you have to first be clear about what the problem is. Because this is a system that I have worked in for so many years, I know where some of the gaps are, but I would want to do a full analysis. So one of the things that I would look at, you have social workers in the welfare department, child care board, probation department, whatever the case may be. You have social workers at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. I don't know if we have them at the polyclinics. Somebody would have to tell me that. I'm not sure about that. We have them at the psychiatric hospital, but do we have social workers at the police? Do we have social work? Because I was told the response when I said we don't, welfare services and childcare board services and them things that are shut down at 4:30, open back at 8:30, don't open on the weekend. I was told you can call through the police PBX and find a social worker. But does the police have social workers? Are you trying to tell me that if I want a food voucher on a Saturday, I have to stop the police in Barbados from running boat behind the men with the AK-47s and everything to set up for me to get a food voucher from a welfare officer?
You're serious about that?
I mean, that's why I was told that you're supposed to, that you can still get the social services, but you get them through the police. But the police department in Barbados does not have social workers, as far as I know, to say, well, we can keep a closer hand on this family. You know, there might be a child coming in. The child may have done a little something, but you can still pull it around. Yeah. Not even the juvenile liaison scheme. I don't know if they have social workers. I am asking. I am not asserting that they don't have. I am asking. And if they do have, this is the information that the public needs so that we can arrest this situation, right? It is easy to say, oh, well, the mothers ain't doing nothing, the fathers ain't doing nothing, Marcia, what are they going to do? Who do they deliver their children to? How are we making sure that where they deliver their children, we're going to get safe services? Let's call a thing a thing. I see one of your astute people saying the police don't have social workers. I'm not going to read the rest of that. But I am not talking about a police officer who has to leave his duty to be a social worker. You know, I'm talking about the post of social worker, within the police force. Because what happens is when you were reading that article just now, you talked about the cracks we left unattended are what are causing the problem in Barbados. The fact that our police department does not have social workers is one of the cracks that we have left unattended. And these cracks are pulling communities, whole communities in, right? Now, one of the other things that I want to talk about is a child, what is classified as a child in need of care and protection. And again, the Child Protection Act sets it out. And children with mental health needs are one of the categories. Now, Marcia, that article that you read is so poignant. Because what we are not understanding, I am sure if you add up all the murders in Barbados between January 2024 and today, right? And you do an analysis of how many children have been affected. And then you ask yourself, what mechanism have we set up for those children to get trauma support? Somebody running through your neighborhood and you're hearing and you're doing your homework. That is not something that you forget. And it may not be that you were born with a mental health need, but because of the trauma you experience, you now end up with a trauma-based mental health need. I'm an advocate. I am not a social worker. If I know these things, the people in our society who are making the 3,000s and the 5,000s and the 6,000s when the month comes must know. We can't do the same thing in Barbados and expect a different result. The final thing that I want to talk about before, we have to move on. Well, two things. I want to say as well, if I'm doing that triage of our social services system in Barbados, attorneys at law are an important sector that we have to pay attention to with respect to family. Barbados is perhaps one of the only places in the world that I know that an attorney at law can set up shop and do any kind of law. So if a person come with a title deed today, to do that. If a person come with a rape case tomorrow, to do that. If a person come with a family matter the next day, to do that. There are specialties of law. And some of the tactics that you use in criminal law will not work in family law. You actually make the situation worse, because what family law is based on is mediation and mitigation, right? Criminal law is based on finding this little tweak, this technicality that you can get your client off, this, that. The two types of law are completely different. The reasons you do them, the way you approach the cases, completely different. So we need a cadre of well-trained family lawyers in Barbados with expertise in family instability if we are going to arrest this problem. Because some of the cases in Barbados become complex because they spend too long in the court system. And the attorneys, frankly, don't have the skills to be able to triage and to work as a part of a team to get the family the help it needs. These are the things that we need to address. When we talk about the parents should do something, how are parents going to be better than the system itself? How are the parents going to be better? I have worked with several parents who have tried. It's not for the lack of trying, right? We talk about parents as if every parent has a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a PhD. They don't. All some have is love for their children. And when something goes wrong, they understand that they need help. But again, ask the question tonight, where can they go to get it? So the attorneys, the final thing that I want to talk about, Marcia, I have operated in the civil society space in Barbados for 25 years. 25 years. I am not afraid or ashamed to say that the cases that I deal with now are far more complex than the ones that I dealt with in 2000 when I started. And the truth is, Marcia, we are past the point in Barbados where anybody should be able to walk off the road and say, I am a civil society person, I offering services for vulnerable people, and just get to set up. Marcia, we are past that. People need individuals that are willing to go through vulnerable sector checks, and they need people who are willing to do at least a basic training course to make sure that they're not doing harm. I am not casting aspersions on anybody's intentions. Of course, we all want good things. We want to help our fellow man. But at the end of the day, some of the skills that you need to be able to move these cases, to first of all, understand what you are seeing, to not add to the trauma, to be able to just know how the system works, read the law, understand the law. It needs people that are committed to making sure that they are trained and can really do what they need to do. And like I said, all don't need to be social workers. I'm not a social worker, but I'm definitely an advocate, and I upgrade my skills all the time. I make sure that I'm upgrading, doing this little course, doing that little training, because that is the responsibility that the work takes. Marcia, civil society in Barbados handles, and you know this because the loyal opposition is also now doing some of this work. Civil society for years now has been filling the gap that the government has left. But you know what is the problem with filling the gap that the government has left? Again, because the services in Barbados are so disjointed, what it does is that it doesn't leave us in the position to create sustained, seamless services. Right? So if I get, again, a case on a Friday night or a Saturday, I don't know what to do with it because I don't know how to contact the welfare. I don't know how to get a food voucher. I don't know how to do any of that. And nobody tells us. Back there in COVID, women's groups, all kinds of groups, church groups, were doing hampers and stuff like that for people.
Yes.
But you know, when they gave you the certificate for the car to say that you could move during the lockdown, the whole time I worked during that lockdown with women, girls, the court, food vouchers, everything, I was driving on the road without a sticker. Because when the government had the meeting with the stakeholders, civil society was not at the table. The other thing that I am going to say about civil society in Barbados is that civil society needs to stop operating in a vigilante way. We are asking the society to stop operating in a vigilante way, and yet still, when it serves us, we are also operating in a vigilante way. What do I mean by that? Marcia, there's not a piece of legislation in Barbados that sets up a shelter in Barbados. Any kind of shelter.
Repeat what you're saying. Explain that for me.
So
we literally have 5 minutes, but we have to pick up this conversation again. But explain.
So real quick in 5 minutes. Everything that has credence in Barbados has credence because of the law, right? So the Ministry of Education has credence because there's an Education Act. They operate under the Act. The Ministry of Health has credence because there's a Health Care Act. They operate under the Act. Shelters in Barbados are not governed by any legislation whatsoever. So if my family member goes into a shelter, there is no minimum guaranteed standard of care for my family member. So if my family member has a mental health need, right, and they go into a shelter and then they give trouble in the shelter, somebody could say, you see, you step back on the road because you giving too much trouble in here. And there is no law that I can go to and say, well, no, you can't do this because the law says that my relative is a protected person in Barbados and they're entitled to A, B, C, and D. Or if you want to put them out, you have to refer them to the psychiatric hospital. None of that exists. but there are civil society groups and individuals that we would know. We live in the same place. So we know, we don't have to call names. We know they are doing this work, but they're not doing it properly. And what ends up happening then is that people get afraid of going to the system because they go and they have bad experiences. So it's okay to say these parents got to do something with these children. They got to stop these children from running up and down, creating friction. And again, I ask, where are they going to take them? Where are they going to take them? That is the responsibility of our government. I remember the Democratic Labour Party government had the Ministry of Family. Was it perfect? No. But it was a step in the right direction, because what it recognized is that by the time the police are running around trying to figure out where the gunshots come from, this, that, it is too late. It's too late. You have to arrest the problem before it gets big and complex and complicated. So I know you said I had 5 minutes. I don't want to go over. But Marcia, as a person living in the diaspora, sitting down, watching and seeing what is happening in Barbados, I vex, I upset. I cycle through so many emotions. And I look at the marches and I look at all of that and I say, you know, at least my people are thinking. But we need to start to demand more of the individuals who are paid, and still by every standard in Barbados, paid well, using the purse of the taxpayers, taking the responsibility, taking the pay without the responsibility. We need to do something about Barbados. We need to do something. It hurts me. It really hurts me. And at the end of the day, anybody knows when it comes to Barbados, when it comes to poor people, when it comes to vulnerable people, they could call me morning, noon, night. I will never say no, and I will always do it for free. But at the end of the day, you have people in this government who think that they don't want to talk to nobody, they don't want to listen to nobody. They're always bombastic, and they don't have the ideas. And all of that is what is creating the problems that we have in Barbados. We got to do something different for a different result. Marcia, Marcia, it is sad. It is sad. The madness has to stop. It has to stop.
Definitely. I'm listening to you, Marcia, while I wait on my other guests. Everybody's saying you need more time. And I want to say to you at the 9 o'clock hour, if you're still up, I don't know what time it is in Canada, and you can come back on and let the people ask you and talk to you. And you know, I'm listening to you, and I know that a lot of what you're saying, I mean, it's so real, it's so true. Because even with the same Silver Hill, I had a mom call me about 3 young boys, and I wouldn't say much more how they're, you know, whatever. I just leave it at that. And they're not in trouble at the moment, but she's worried. Because she saw that, you know what, somebody close to them got shot. And these boys are just boys going to school. The mother is worried, and she's called me, and believe you me, I call all about, and I cannot get anywhere to help that woman with those children. And then, so when I heard you say we're blaming the parents, I thought about that lady today. As I was watching SHAWNATHON's funeral, I was thinking about those 3 boys. And the most I could do, Marcia, and you got, yeah, I know how you feel about this. But you know, you and I, we share.
Pray for them.
We pray for them. Honestly, Marsha, I sent it to a prayer group, but you know, I'm still calling. I literally spoke to an ex-probation officer. I'm trying, but in the meantime, I said, "Oh God, Father, help them." Why it's 3 weeks now, and I can't get any help for these boys.
Yeah. One of the things that they did, so I hear people, you know, they talk about the diaspora and this and that, and they talk about, oh, they fixed the crime in New York, and they fixed the crime here, and they fixed the crime there. It is not only the police that fixed the crime in New York. There were community groups in New York that were holding healing circles at the level of the community. So you train, you don't need to be a trained social worker to run a healing circle, right? how are we training people in Barbados to help each other with the trauma of what is going on in Barbados right now?
Right. No. But I
Like
would love
that,
for you to come back
yes,
on,
I
because
will.
because
I will.
really that is part of what's happening. We're seeing a cycle because we're not addressing the issues. Okay.
Yeah.
So Marsha, thank you so much. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us, and just hang out there and come back if you're still up. Come right on in. Okay.
Will
Thank you
do.
so
No
much. Yes.
worries.
Okay. Oh boy, folks, this is a really solemn evening for me. I don't know how you take it, but you know, growing up in Jamaica, you know, as I read that article of the child saying that they just want to leave, that's how I felt. You know, growing up in Big Lane, Central Village, you know, real ghetto, and scared. You're going to school, you're praying, you get home, and I suspect that's why it affects me this much. And I'm saying, I believe I'm here for a reason in Barbados. I've accepted that now. And it's a sound the alarm that we have to do something. We've got to, well, we cannot continue like this. We cannot allow another child to be hit by a bullet, sitting down, minding their own business, and hit by a bullet. Can you imagine what's happening in communities now? Young people, children, parents. Can you imagine the fear? Can you imagine the trauma? Can you imagine the tears that are falling right now in Nelson Street? Do we not care because it's Nelson Street, or what? What is going on? But we're going to talk about that some more. But I have Senator Ryan Walters is coming to us, and he's going to be talking about the impact of the tariffs on Barbados. And really and truly, I believe all of that is going to impact on the communities and on the society. So let me just welcome Senator Ryan Walters. Welcome, sir, to the Marcia Week Show. You're muted, sir.
Hi, Marcia. Good evening to you, and good evening to your viewers. Nice to see you again. Yeah.
Yes, welcome, sir. Welcome. I just want to, as I do whenever I speak with Senator Andre, is to commend you both on what you are doing on behalf of Barbados inside the Senate. We are on the outside and we become your echo, or sometimes you become our echo. The point is that we're working together. It's the citizens and you. It's not a lot of you, but you know you have our support, Senator Walters. And I just want to say thank you for the preparation that you do to go in to speak so eloquently, and we're so proud of both of you. You are sounding, man, you guys sounded real good. So thank you so very much for what you do, sir. So go
Thanks,
right ahead.
Marcia. Yeah, thank you. Just doing our job. Just doing our job. Yeah. So how are you this evening?
I am you know, I'm not sure how I am. I'm just thinking about the family in Nelson Street and sending my prayers to them as well.
Yeah. Very sad. Very sad. I was listening to a bit of your presentation before you came on. And I think it's a time where I believe that the communities now are going to be very lonely. I could see parents asking their children not to go outside on evenings. It's actually one more week left of vacation. Easter, where you should be out flying your kites and having fun and playing for Easter. I think a lot of that, I don't think we're going to see that type of environment over the next 7 to 10 days. Because I think people are just scared, both adults and children. So it's a very sad time for Barbados. So
yes,
I hope that the young guy survives and that he recovers fully to have a proper life.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You might miss me just for 1 or 2 minutes. We have a technical issue that I'm going to sort out, but I'm just going to give you the floor and just go right ahead. Okay.
Oh,
thank you so much. Yeah, just keep going. I'm hearing, but I'm in the background fixing something. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah. So thanks for the invitation again, Marcia. I know you asked me to come on just to discuss an article that was put out by the Democratic Party by myself on behalf of the party relative to the impact of tariffs on Barbados. And so I would just share a little bit about that and just have a general discussion on some of the rationale behind some of what was said in the contents of the release. So just to be clear, the release is based on the notion that each time there is an announcement by the government of an external shock, whether it be civil war, whether it be increase in freights or duties, whether it be in the case of the US, increase in tariffs across the world that will impact Barbados. What we found in recent time over the last few years specifically is that the response of the government has been to take a position that they can do very little to protect or to shield consumers, especially the vulnerable in the country. What we consistently hear is that inflation is imported and that increasing cost is imported and our hands are tied. In the case of the US tariffs, and well, I definitely don't disagree that a regional approach to open discussions and dialogue with the United States or with any other country is the way to go. But it does not absent this government or any government that governs to itself look at what it can do to protect the citizens. Because while the collaborative effort, the regional effort is fine, it takes time, but it does not exempt you from saying, look, we have a situation here, or we have a pending situation. How can we take a firm action to protect our consumers, our citizens from this rising cost? Because the reality is that inflation is real. Well, a government cannot, and obviously it's not wise to just respond to inflation every year. There are external shocks that would trigger a response, especially when they're excessive costs that consumers will be asked to bear. So we thought that given the constant refrain of the government that our hands are tied and that they can do very little to protect the vulnerable in the society, we thought that we should make it clear that that is not our position. That is not what the people of Barbados actually expect, and that there are actually two broad ways that the government can address rising cost. And this goes beyond tariffs. This goes beyond rising oil prices. This goes beyond rising freight. This goes beyond the other shocks, external shocks that come upon us that we have to bear. Right? And the two main responses is that one, the government can seek to reduce the pass-through cost to the consumer, or two, the government can also seek to increase spending power of the consumer. Right? So the two broad things that when you're looking at cost of living that we should always try to address. How can we limit the pass-through of cost to those who have to purchase? And how can we give a low space that those who have to purchase have the spending power, the capacity that they can then afford those goods that would have the increased cost? And we have to look, although we look broadly, we have to frame the conversation to what is essential. And food is essential. And this is where, as well, I would say disappointed with the government because they do not use these opportunities to share information with the public. They use the information to hide behind why they should continue to do what they're doing which is just raking billions of dollars tax revenue, and not shield consumers in times of need. And when I say educate or inform, does the country really know what we import from the US, what we import from CARICOM, what we import from China, what we import from Europe, Canada, etc.? Does the country even know how much food do we import as a percentage of our total imports, etc.? And I think the government, who has all this information, at least at a very high level, and should see it as their responsibility to come and share some information, because when we hear about US tariffs, the next thing we see is the private sector coming and saying, expect prices to increase. And the first thing we think as persons that run households, that have families to manage, children to feed and so forth, we think about, will we be able to feed our family?
Mm-hmm.
That's the first. We don't think about how much a pair of Nike shoes will cost. We never think about how much school clothes will cost in the new coming year for September. We think about, will we be able to feed our family? So when the first point we made was that the government should isolate the impact of food inflation. That is, explain to Barbados how or if food will be impacted and to the extent that food would be impacted.
Yes.
Right? I don't think that Barbados brings food from China. I'd be very surprised if we do. We bring food from US, primarily, CARICOM primarily. We assume then that maybe the tariffs will not have the tariffs, especially on China, will not have that big inflationary context, because food is not really money. What China is exporting is really not food. It's really commodities and goods, and goods and so forth, right? So I think that, to put it in context, we are asking the government to isolate the impact of any tariff,
yes,
of any external shock to food, first and foremost, because we all have to eat. We know we have to import food as well. Isolate it and let us know what the impact of that is. Right? Now, the Barbados Statistical Service says that Barbados imports up to January to August last year. That's the most recent, the latest information I have, or the most recent information I have, sorry. 18.75% food and live animals. So 18.75% of our imports from January to August was food and live animals in total. They also said that 37% of our imports come from the US and 25.9% of our imports come from CARICOM. So to put it in context, about 19% of our imports are food related. So that would give you an idea of the impact that any shocks will have. And then you see that we imported more from the US, but CARICOM is very close behind.
Still very much there. But
right?
Let me ask you something. I heard the Prime Minister saying that they were concerned about the tariffs placed on China, because they were thinking of, she was talking about fruits and vegetables and those kinds of things. Am I mistaken in that?
Well, I do not have the data to support that we import a lot of food from China. I don't think that China would send fruits and vegetables to the US, and then we will be importing from those imports from US that come from China. Even just the voyage of those goods and the cost to have a cold storage, travel from China to the US, and then onward to other countries. Maybe possible, but the data doesn't support that, right? But that's what I'm saying to you, is that this is where they need to communicate the facts so that we are not making assumptions, and so that Barbadians see the real situation, and we start to keep these persons that want to pass through this course or pass on this course honest as possible. Because Barbadians have to be alert, and we can only be alert if we have the critical information to make our assumptions and to make our decisions and to see what is going on, to make sense of it, right? So I'm not sure if the Prime Minister can substantiate that as relates to food, but I can tell you that most of our imports are coming from US and CARICOM in general, and I would suspect that most of that 26% from CARICOM is probably food. Is more than likely food, and not goods, as we would say, right? So that was the first point that we wanted to make, that so keep following. There's a response. One, that you can see how you can limit the pass-through costs. Two, we can give a little more spending power to the consumers. Okay. So I saw a comment there where we import frozen goods, right? You could put it back up. So let's see what people are saying. We import frozen vegetables and that's fine. What we're looking at is the scale of what we do.
Scale.
How we
I
do,
understand.
right? We're looking at the scale, and how then does that translate into increased prices, right? And we're not saying that prices wouldn't increase. We're just looking at some of the things that we need to analyze as well, so that we know what the true picture is. Because as I said, we don't have all of the data to make the decisions. But what we do is that the Barbados Statistical Service does have some basic high-level information, which I've just shared with you in terms of where our major import markets are, right? So when we also say that, look, if you are in a position where you're in a crisis, you could, as a government, you could assess then your taxes, your levies, your duties, and your VAT at the port, because that's where the cost. That's where then, if you have no control of the costs coming in on the sea, as soon as it reaches your port and is ready to be transmitted into the system, you might have some control then to reduce that impact, so that it does not fully go on to the consumers. So we say, look, you have the opportunity to look at your tax structure, look at your tariffs that you charge, look at your levies, look at your VAT rate, etc. And you can make an assessment. Again, I am targeting food because we do not eat shoes, we don't eat jeans pants, or we don't eat polo shirts.
Right.
We eat food. So it is premised on what are the big ticket items during a crisis that we need to ensure that we cushion consumers with. I'm not saying that we shouldn't look at the other items. I'm just saying let us focus on the essentials in a crisis.
Yes,
right?
Makes sense.
Right. And if we assess those duties and those things at the port, maybe then we can look at how do we restructure those in a time of crisis, or even to be fair to the consumers. So people will often tell you, the prices at the port, how the government calculates the VAT and the duties is unfair, etc. It gives them an opportunity to assess that, to say, look, so right now there is cost of the goods, there's insurance of the goods, and there's freight to get it to Barbados. Duties are charged on that, and then VAT is charged on that.
Right.
So there may be some opportunity to look to see how can we still get some duty, still get our VAT, but still make it a little more economical, because it's not because you're compounding all of the money so that you can get a bigger intake with the tax revenue.
So
right?
you're basically saying that these are the areas that government can control. They have control
Yes,
over
they
the
have
duties, the freight, the VAT. We can't do anything about what the US is doing, really, but we can
yes,
do something when it gets to our port. It's really
correct.
what you're saying.
Yes, exactly. So again, I'm just the notion of they can't do anything, that is nonsense. You cannot respond to as I said, you cannot respond to inflationary environment in this manner, but you definitely can respond to external shocks. A shock is something that is going to have a significant impact, right? So you can respond in a manner that will cushion your consumers. Now, a little politics in here, we also called out the fact that the government in their 2018 manifesto said they would have reduced VAT back to 15%.
Yes.
Now, it is 7 years, and the VAT is still 17.5%. That I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. That speaks for itself, right? That is an action that the government can take
But
as
this
an
is
option.
something that they could look at now, especially if we're going to be if we're going to be impacted, if our food bill is going to be impacted, and what is passed on to the consumer. If there's going to be some impact, this is something that I think as citizens we need to ask them about.
Right, exactly. So we raised that question because it's a very easy thing to change as well, and it will save you some money on your bill at the supermarket for sure. Right, but what it would do, it would also offset some of those increases. So, for example, if you are paying, using simple numbers so that I can do simple calculations.
Yes.
If you're paying $10 for a product, and you're paying, that means you're paying 70.5% of that, right? So let's do some math. That's about 175, I think. 10 times 17.5%. Right, easy. $1.75, easy, right? If the price goes to $12, you're going to pay 70.5% of that. But if you reduce the VAT to 15%, you can see that because you couldn't change the price, you change your VAT, you're going to still get a saving to the consumer.
Correct.
Right? So you offset that increase at the source with your adjustment locally so that you cushion the consumers. And again, this was a 2018 manifesto, so it's nothing that we're pulling out of our hat. It was a promise to reach, and it was a promise to reduce the cost of living or to slow the rate of cost of living from the Barbados Labour Party in 2018. Once prices go up, they do not come down. They hardly do. So that is why it has to be proactive. It has to be before prices get to the shelf. And that's why I'm talking about at the port.
Yes.
What do you do before they get to the shelf? Right? Because once they go up, it's very hard for them to come back down. And we've seen that with all the other things that have been happening with the removal of the NSRL, with the social price compact during COVID. We haven't really seen or felt the impact with those reductions because generally in my view, they were trapped by the retailers. They were trapped there and we didn't get the full extent as consumers. And that leads me to a very important point that we identified, which was enhancing the monitoring of prices on the shelves. Now, if we are not monitoring the prices on the shelves, we are doing nothing in Barbados. Because we must ensure that there's no price gouging. I made a point that the minister, or one is a senior minister of government, he was in the press saying that there are instances where they have seen that some retailers are acting unfairly. I can't remember, he framed it in that way. He didn't say price gouging, he said are acting unfairly to consumers. But they did nothing about it. So they didn't step in and say we're going to fix it. They just identified it. However, the health services bill, where persons have to clean up lots and so forth in neighborhoods, I think 2 or 3 persons have been brought to the law courts already under that act in less than 6 months. So it seems to me that the average man can take penalty, but not business people in this country. And if we have to be fair, we have to monitor prices on the shelves. And this is not price control. This is monitoring prices so that we wean out price gouging and unfair pricing practices. And this is an environment when the government is trying to hold hands with the private sector to release or to relieve consumers. That means that a big responsibility, a big portion of responsibility lies within the sector, the retail sector, the owners. So they have to have a high moral compass so that we can get the benefits. But the government must monitor. And again, very disappointing because their idea of monitoring is putting a price up, and you can go to the price app and see what prices for one product are across various supermarkets or mini marts. That's it. No, we are no better off knowing that a toilet paper sells for 10 cents more at another supermarket than it does at a corner shop. What we want to know is that you have given the private sector, you have come into a relationship with the private sector in some form or fashion. You have reduced some taxes at the port, or you've reduced VAT, but you are feeling the effects of those reductions in the supermarket on the shelves. So if it is one place that the government must spend money, it is in the monitoring of prices on the shelves across Barbados. Not the reporting of the prices, but a monitoring of prices and keeping them in check. Right? Now, those issues then are some of the things that the government can do to kind of reduce the price, slow the impact of pass-through that is passed through to the consumers. The other half is, how can we give the consumers more spending
we have
power?
1 minute, believe it or not. It's going so good. This is like a class. You're doing, this is excellent. Very good job.
You have to give me 5 minutes though, please.
All right.
Right.
Mr. Strickland is right there. And Mr. Strickland, let me bring him in. He can get 5 minutes, Mr. Strickland?
He can have 5 minutes.
Yes,
Right.
it is
Mr.
excellent.
Strickland.
And I know you're coming up on the rear, going to do an awesome job. But continue, please.
Right. So the other aspect is, how do you give then the consumers a little more spending power? Because as goods go up incrementally, wages might go up for some, wages might not go up for some, but in any event, we need to make sure that they have some spending power. And the two things we identified is this minimum wage discussion. The government said since last March, in the budget of March 2024, that they would have increased minimum wage. They have not. So that is now 14 going 15 months that they have not followed through on this promise to implement minimum wage, to increase the minimum wage. The Minister of Labour is on record in January saying that it's coming. On February says it's coming. March says it's coming. This month is probably coming. Next month. We need to have that increase in the minimum wage so that persons have that extra spending power. Because remember, the government and national insurance increases every year incrementally. January, sometime in January every year, right? And the government also reduced your pay pack because they've introduced, they move from the catastrophe fund to another fund, resilience fund, and they've increased your contribution.
Yes.
So you're taking home less when you should actually be taking home more. They should be working to make sure that you take home more, not you take home less, right? So the point I'm making is that increase in national minimum wage right away can solve some of the problems, right? But that gives you spending power. And what I like about this is that, of course, you cannot be too wild and reckless and give minimum wage that's off of the books. I wouldn't recommend that. But at least it gives persons the choice and the power to make their choices and to feel that they can go and make a decision on what they have to buy, etc. Right? It gives the opportunity for somebody to, if they were buying 2 lunch of meat, they could buy 2 lunch of meat and a tuna. You know, that they can have a variety in their households and stuff like that. If they're paying down on the bills, they could pay the whole light bill as opposed to just 3/4 of it. I hope that they can catch up next week, etc. So it's very important that we focus on that, right? And the last point that we made in my last 2 minutes is that the lower and middle class often get left out. The lower middle and the middle class often get left out. Now, it will take a while for me to understand, to explain to you how important the middle class is. Because the middle class of this country is paying what we call income tax. It is a significant amount of money that is taken from the pay packs of the middle income persons. So they themselves have to also get an ease. So we can look at reducing personal income tax. I think income tax is around 22% or so now, right? It is a lot. It is a significant amount of money that comes out of your salary. And if you just reduce that in some instances by 1 or 2%, you can free up $200, $300 a month depending on a person's salary. And that would help them to be able to have the freedom to continue to consume as they want to. So the middle class needs to be protected in this country. And we could have another discussion on this.
Yes,
because the middle class discussion is very important, huh? And they carry a big burden because they're carrying along those that are less fortunate than them in terms of earning capacity.
Yeah.
Right. So those are kind of broadly how we shape the conversation. The government must not absent itself from a response. The government must continue to be looking at ways on how they can shield consumers, ways how they can put more money in persons' hands. And one of the most simple ways that the government, and we asked for this for 2 years in the Senate, is by giving allowances back again, family allowances for children. You know, all those things help reduce your income tax return, give you a little extra money, a little $500, etc. So a person that is working for less than I think $25,000 or so a year,
I can't remember the figure,
gets a check for $1,300 a year or something like that, right? But a person that is paying $25,000 in taxes, gets nothing. You know, so it is a thing. You cannot sacrifice one for the next. We have to work in tandem. As we speak, that $1,300 that they get could be increased as well, because it's been 7 years. Inflation is well over 12% for those 7 years, and yet, you know, we're not seeing the adjustments necessary. But the government is raking in much more in revenue. So Marsha, that's broadly.
Yeah,
that's broadly what I'm saying
this
here.
is fantastic, Ryan. I'm telling you, I could, I'm into accounting, and you're talking, and I'm doing the numbers and thing. I keep telling you, I love this discussion, because it's about numbers, and it makes, somebody wrote here, Mrs. Strickland, common sense. It's making sense. Somebody wrote, and I think you did a great job. And I can't wait when you bring charts and things. I love charts. I want to, yeah.
And you get excited when you see charts.
Yeah, Mr. Strickland have that tonight. But because we've got to educate the people, we can't assume that they know. And I thought that you did. Yeah, somebody said we need a whole night from Mr. Walters, and then they want a whole night from Marsha. So the people are open to learn, And thank you so much, Mr. Walters.
You're welcome.
Walters, excellent job.
All right, you're welcome, Marsha.
Give your colleague, Senator Andre Worrell, my good wishes, and keep working together. And we know that Mr. Thorne is leading the way. And, excellent job the three of you are doing inside there. And we support the idea of an opposition. That's what we're doing. Okay. So God bless you, sir.
I love you, everyone. Right.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Yeah, I love the numbers. I love when you guys break it down, and I learned something. And it was really good. It was really, really good. The people, let me put up some of their thoughts here as I wait to welcome. Yes, wait to welcome somebody telling us about the $300 that you were talking about, Mr. Strickland. But we're gonna go right into Mr. Strickland. Deborah Seeley saying they promised a 300 give her. Oh, and then she wanted to know if they gave it out as yet. I don't even know. But what happened here? Listen, Dave. Okay, the child is 14 years old. But there is, I think people got mixed up because they have an 11-year-old brother that is speaking with the police, telling them what they saw, is what I saw earlier. Well, we thank God that the child is prayerfully recovering. Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much. Okay. Well, Mrs. Strickland is here, and Mrs. Strickland is going to be talking to us about NIS, because we've got to understand what is happening. And this is an educational program. We're talking about sickness and injury, right? Am I correct in saying that?
Correct.
Yes, sir. So over to you. Over to you.
Good night, Madam Principal. Good night, Marcy and the loyal opposition. I had to say that because I sat and I listened to Marsha just now, and I could listen to her for the rest of the night. Honest, because being part of civil society, we are necessary more so than ever. And my prayers are with those who were hurt in Nelson Street, for those who are grieving over the loss of loved ones. And therefore, we as a people, we are still a very much a united nation. A nation that is united, let me put it that way. Okay, the last time I was on the program, I looked at the catastrophe, which is the resilience levy, which Senator Walters just alluded to. But tonight, I want to continue our Wednesday discussion in respect of sickness and injury. And we agreed that we would try to have this discussion every Wednesday night, so that I'm going to be breaking it down in these small sections, because it is important for persons to understand the whole issue of sickness benefits. And even though I'm going to say things that individuals may take for granted, it's necessary to be said. Now, we know that if you are sick in Barbados, if you're not well for whatever reason, you will call into the workplace.
Yes.
And you would indicate, well, I'm not able to come to work today because I'm not feeling well. And that's a responsibility that you have to your employer. The second day, you must call to indicate to your employer that I'm not coming to work today because of illness. Mm-hmm. Now, before the close of work on the third day, if you have not submitted a medical certificate to your employer, then you have terminated your own services, irrespective of the reason. In other words, you gave the claim to an individual who somewhat forgot it, if the employer has not received it by the end of the work day, then the employer can determine that you have abandoned your work. We are well aware that individuals may be in the hospital and they're not able to obtain a sickness claim, but a loved one should still notify the employer so that the employer knows that this person is in a situation that they cannot obtain the certificate at present. Now, for many years, we are well aware that doctors gave 2 yellow forms. This was never a requirement, in that the employer, the employee can request, and they're more popular now, a certificate, a white certificate from the employer, which does not contain cause of illness, because we are well aware of social media and where that information can end up. But the individual has a responsibility to obtain the yellow one from the medical practitioner, and while you have 3 days to submit it to your employer, you have 1 year to submit it to National Insurance. After 1 year, National Insurance is under no obligation to honor that claim. And there are many persons who have suffered, especially government officers, who I'll get in that discussion another time, but the individual is being paid as a temporary officer and have received more income than the 14 days allowed, sent the claim to the workplace, to the government department, and they have just held it, not knowing that they should have sent it to the National Insurance Department. So even though it comes from a government department after a year, National Insurance is under no obligation to honor that claim. Now, when you obtain the claim from the doctor, you are the person who determines what that claim can be used for. I'm sorry I did not have this slide available, but the yellow sickness, the yellow form, I'm referring to it as a medical certificate. The yellow form, there are 3 questions on that form. A, accident or bodily disablement in the course of employment. B, accident not work related. C, illness. In other words, there are 3 options. And the individual, you are the person who determines which you're going to use that form for. B and C are basically the same. So that if, in your opinion, this is not in the doctor's opinion, this is not in your employer's opinion, if in your opinion, what is wrong with you is work related, then you should take A. Okay, now, so I'm going to be dealing with the sickness claim first. Just give me 1 minute. Right, the sickness claim first. In that, if what is wrong with you is not work related, then and the doctor would have specified on the claim what is wrong with you, then it's important, it's very important to make sure you fill that form out completely, making sure that you put your current address, a number that you can be reached at during working hours, and if you're going to put a cell phone, make sure you have money on your phone, because very often staff members try to reach individuals during working hours, and it's difficult or sometimes impossible to reach that person where they need further information to process that claim, and it can be very time consuming for a staff member to try to reach an individual. Okay, and sometimes with because there's no provision on the claim for a number for the workplace, therefore you can even sometimes call some workplaces because there's not a listing in the directory. So once you submit that claim, then it means that for the first 3 days of that claim, if the claim is less than 2 weeks, you're not paid for the first 3 days. I'm going to repeat that. If the claim is less than 2 weeks, You're
Yes.
not paid for the first 3 days, which are considered waiting days. Now, so for argument's sake, you could have a claim for 1 week. You're not paid for the first 3 days. You do not resume work, and you have an additional 1 week. While you would have been paid for the first 3 days on the first claim, because you did not return to work, then when the second claim is paid, you'll be paid for that full claim and the 3 days that you were not paid on the first claim. So you do not lose. So once the claim is more than less than 2 weeks, you're not paid for the first 3 days. Now, you are paid sickness benefit for a total of 52 weeks, 365 days. Now, and this is for persons in the private sector and for government temporary officers. They are paid from national insurance. For government appointed officers, and I'm speaking about government appointed officers in the general service, because there are individuals who are appointed to a board, but they are regarded with the National Insurance Department as regular employees, like some person like K. Shepherd and whoever else. Okay, BRA, National Sports Council, National NCC, all those other boards, Child Care Board. They are now classified as regular since 2019 when this government took over. Okay, and that's another discussion. But sufficient that an appointed officer qualifies for 1 year's salary. So while he does not qualify for sickness benefit because they pay a lesser percentage, he's paid for 1 year's salary.
1 second, somebody's asking here, 1 year from which date?
Okay, if I'm speaking of the private sector, I'm going back to the private sector. Now,
yes,
it can be 1 year straight, a calendar year, not a calendar, a 1 year straight, or if the claims are separated by less than 13 weeks, it is considered a linked claim. So you could have a claim and you had, say, 2 months, and you return to work for a week and you're back off, it continues. But if you return to work for more than the 13 weeks, it would mean then that you qualify for more days. So once the claims are separated in less than 13 weeks, the days continue, so it can stretch over a longer period than a 52 weeks period. You want what I'm saying? Okay?
Yes.
Right. So as I said, so you're entitled to 1 year's sick leave from the National Insurance Department, while as an appointed government officer, you are entitled to 1 year's salary. Once you've reached that 1 year's salary as an appointed government officer, then you are entitled to 6 months at half pay. And after that, you would need to be medically boarded. But that's not the conversation for tonight, because we have a lot to deal with in this short space of time. So let's get back to the sickness benefit. So once you receive that form, make sure that so that in the slide, it would have indicated that, just give me 1 minute here. Right. If you look at slide, the slide 8, all right. If you look at slide 8, it says that you are not entitled to sickness benefit while you are on holiday. So if you're the form asks if you were on holiday. Now, but there are some employers who pay employees. Now, there's no legislation which requires any employer to pay any employee for not even 1 day sick leave. That's been a common law practice that we've had for many years. There are negotiated agreements between employers and employees, or employers and trade unions representing employees, where they may grant 6 days as a temporary officer, 14 days as an appointed officer, 1 year. But but there's some employers that will pay an employee while they're off, and there are different arrangements whereby the employee refund the employer for the check that was paid at National Insurance. There are other arrangements where the employer may choose not to pay the individual. When you get the check, you bring to the employer and they make up the difference. So the different arrangements, but again, these are only arrangements. But if the employee is paid, it meant that national insurance will be deducted from the person's salary and they're given a credit. And therefore, the credits, in other words, for the purpose of calculating that benefit, if the average weekly salary is say $400, then they are given a credit of $400, and credits can be used for both qualifying and for sickness benefit, injury benefit, pension, and old age pension, not for maternity. And I've been arguing this case now for over 19 years, and I'm hoping that shortly that this will be done. But those credits are added so that there's the myth that the period of sick leave that you would have had during your working life will reduce your pension. That is only a myth, because the credits issued during your working life, whether it be for sickness, unemployment, maternity, will be added once you have the number of contributions to qualify for the pension. So therefore, you're not paid for sickness benefit when you are on holiday. Okay. And as I said, employers have different arrangements. Now, go quickly to the employment injury, which is the one that is very technical, and this is where many persons lose out on benefits, because they are the normal injuries whereby a person has a cut, a fall, whatever else, a particular day, a particular time, and so forth. But there are a number of occupational injuries which individuals suffer from and are not aware, and sometimes employers will tell them that you cannot qualify for employment injury. And let me just go through a couple of them. There is carpal tunnel, which would have occurred over a period of time. A lot of persons that suffer with low back pains, respiratory tract infections, because there are a lot of sick buildings and so forth. So that if in your opinion you are suffering from an injury, then I would suggest that you notify your employer when you start to experience it. You may even need to go as far as putting it in writing, because the person that you report it to today may not be there tomorrow, or the person might not communicate that to the HR department. So it's advisable sometimes to put this information in writing, because once an employment injury case arises, then it means that a report has to be sent to the employer for confirmation. So let me get back then to the other areas of injuries, and there is the mental injury, and I can go as far back as when a police officer accidentally shot a gentleman in the river terminal many years ago. He would have qualified for employment injury because it was a medical injury. 2 years ago, more recent, unfortunately, there was a worker who was killed on the at the port with a container. The operator of the crane would have made a claim for employment injury. And it's interesting in that case because he had made a claim for sickness. I was not aware it would have been a claim for, it could be a claim for injury. So when I found out and I spoke to him, I had to help him to, to get the relevant form from National Insurance to upgrade his claim from sickness to injury. So therefore, that's where this program is so necessary for the education of individuals. And therefore, you have the mental side of it. And as a result, while for sickness benefit, you must have had at least 7 paid or credited contributions in the relevant quarter. And the relevant quarter being, for argument's sake, we are in the quarter of April to June. That relevant quarter will be the penultimate quarter, October to December. So you have to have at least 7 weeks paid or credited. In other words, you would have had to have worked 7 weeks in that period, or a combination of working and receiving benefits in that quarter of 7 weeks to qualify. For injury, it's totally different. You could have just gone on to the job the first day. Once you have been granted that job, once you are injured, then you can make a claim and can qualify for employment injury. I'm going to give you two classic cases. There was the guy who was electrocuted at, there was Glacier Ice a couple of, about 2 years ago. I think that was about his third day on the job. And then there was another case many years ago where a truck was going around the roundabout at 6 Roads. It overturned, and there was one young man that died, two others who were on top of the mile. They were hurt, and that was their first day on the job. So you don't have to have been working once the employer has indicated that the person was doing what they were supposed to do on the report, and therefore national insurance can make the decision that it is an employment injury. So there are other injuries that sometimes are considered gray areas, but I always advise an individual, once in your opinion, what is wrong with you is the work related, then make a claim. Now, as much as national insurance need that report from the employer to support your claim, there are many cases where employers have either determined it did not work, it didn't happen at their workplace, or the information being communicated to the HR has been absent, and therefore the employer is not able to support that information.
Yes.
Now, there is legislation which grants the person the right to bring two witnesses, and I'm saying two witnesses, to what would have happened, to provide written affidavits that they saw, witness, they are aware of the injury. Now, I always advise persons to be very careful asking your friend, because if the employer said it didn't happen at the workplace, and by way of that report, yes, that affidavit should be private and confidential at the National Insurance Department, but I would not sit here and say that everything is always confidential. We're dealing with human beings. And therefore, your friend who provides the affidavit, that may get into the hands of the employer, and therefore, while you keep your job, your friend may lose theirs for supporting you. So be very, very careful.
Wow.
You know, when you're asking your friend to support what is wrong with you. And I'm going to give you a classic case of also knowing who your employer is.
But
Now,
before you go there, there's a question here. Somebody asking about, what about if you're temporary employed?
For national insurance purposes, the only temporary employee is a person working in the government service. Not even, in other words, there's a category for temporary workers, but the rate of contribution is the same as that for a person in the private sector. Now, a person may be temporary and could be temporary for the next 5 years. Okay? In other words, once you are working, you should insist that national is deducted from your salary, because the employer has a right to make the deduction, is responsible for the full contribution. They have a right to deduct it at the time the salary is paid. If the employer failed to make that deduction and then it is reported to national insurance, the employer cannot make that deduction at a later time. It's still responsible for the full contribution. But if the employee does not notify national insurance when this is happening, and they come to national afterwards, national will treat it as collusion between the employee and the employer to defraud national insurance. So persons work and then they wait until things turn sour and then go to national insurance, asking national to collect what was never deducted. So once you start to work, make sure that national is being deducted, okay? And even though the employer may say you are on probation, national does not regard any as probation. Once you're working for $21 per week or more, the employer is obligated to make deductions from your salary. So the temporary matter does not does
Doesn't
not
matter. It doesn't
that
matter.
doesn't matter in terms of national insurance.
Well,
Okay,
we
so go ahead.
have 5 minutes because I know we had given some of your time to thing, and I
No
see
problem.
Marsha there waiting.
Right.
But continue. Yes,
I'm
5 minutes.
going to go very quickly. So that
Yes.
once you I was going to use another scenario where this guy was injured and he did not know who his employer was, because the person who he identified as his employer said, no, you were working for a subcontractor and not for us. And therefore, in that particular case, I'm certain that that guy would have got almost $500,000. I'm telling you, because he lost both hands in that accident, okay, on that work site many years ago. So once a person qualifies then for employment injury, then the individual can receive employment injury up to 365 days from the date of the accident. Now, while the question was asked earlier about sickness, it can go past a 365 days period. For injury, it ends at 365. At 365, if you are still suffering from that injury, once it was approved, then you can make a claim for disablement. Now, with disablement, you can be sent to the doctor to be assessed. And once the doctor gives an assessment of 1% or over, then you can get what can be considered as employment injury, but what is referred to as increased disablement, up now to 5 years from the date of that accident. In other words, an additional 4 years. Okay. Now, so and you are still working in between and so forth. Once you qualify for employment injury, then you also can make a claim for medical expenses and traveling in respect of that injury. Now, for medical expenses, that would be things like therapy, things like medication, doctor fees, and whatever else, both local and overseas. Now, if you have a case where the medical attention available is not available in Barbados, then your doctor would have to write a letter, provide you with a letter, to the CEO of the National Insurance Department, indicating that you're traveling overseas, and therefore when you have paid your medical expense and you return to Barbados, or they're sent back here, then National will consider if they will pay all or the majority or how much of that medical expense. If you're unable to travel alone, then whoever is traveling with you, the doctor would have to indicate that also. Then the airfare of that person will be considered. So both local and overseas traveling. Now, for traveling, there are 4 areas of traveling. I would just indicated the one in respect of overseas travel. But then if you're traveling by public transport, there's no need for a ticket because tickets are not provided by ZRs and minibuses. I'm not talking about transport buses, but if you're going for, say, from St. Lucie where you live for Oystins, there's not one bus service, so it'll be $7 going and $7 coming. So you would indicate on the form that you would collect to attach the receipts for the medical expenses, and therefore your claims, your yellow forms, and those would the traveling would be supported by those dates. If you're traveling by taxi, obviously it'll be a registered taxi with the license authority. Then you'll provide a relevant receipt. In other words, the tariff may be from say St. Lucie to Oystins, maybe say $100. Therefore, $100 going and $100 coming, a receipt from the taxi owner. If you're traveling by your private car, then you would indicate from, say, St. Lucie to Belleville, wherever else. National will use the Google Map to chart the distance, and then because you're going back home, then, or if you're going back home, it will be double, and therefore you will be paid $1.50 per kilometer. Now, this is where many public officers suffer, because even though you cannot qualify for injury benefit and your salary, because an appointed officer cannot get sickness benefit, but they should apply for injury benefit so that their claim can be assessed in a timely manner, so that if they have a claim for disablement, because the next program I'm going to be dealing with invalidity and disablement. Okay, there's a difference, and persons they mix them up, so that public officers very often do not make claims for employment injury because you cannot get your salary and the employment injury from national insurance, but it's important for the claim to be assessed so that you can have a refund of your medical expense and your traveling for life in respect of that injury.
Yeah.
So that I'll go back over very quickly. Once you go to the doctor, you obtain the 2 different types of paperwork. The
Yeah.
one from your employer, submit it within the 3-day period to national insurance within the 1-year period. Once that claim, you receive that claim, you determine whether it's used for sickness or for injury. You're paid 60 2/3% for sickness, 90% for injury.
Right.
The injury claim must be supported by either a report from the employer or affidavits. If there's no employment injury report or affidavits, then you'll be paid sickness benefit and you cannot receive medical expenses and traveling. So, Madam Principal,
Listen, this has been honestly, I'm serious. I'm like, some of this I remember hearing from Caswell, but then you've added a whole lot, you've added more on this because he had started to teach us all of this. But somebody has a question here, and I see Miss Myrie is waiting. Someone says, if contracted workers get injured on the job, can anything be put in place for such workers?
Now, self-employed persons, even though they pay contributions, they cannot receive employment injury. Now, a person who is a contract worker might be deemed based on the contract that they have, that they are actually employees. And that's another story because there's the legal opinion on this matter, whether there is a contract for service and a contract of service. So you need to know about where there's doubt. Once you start to work and you have doubt about your status, go to national insurance. You're busy, yes, but go to national insurance so that national insurance can give guidance to you as an employee, as a worker. The employer, you may need to go to national insurance also, because you may determine this person is self-employed, but then the person might have been employed by you and you are not liable for the full contribution. So the contract, there are different types of contract, but definitely if you are deemed self-employed by the National Insurance Department, then you do not pay towards the employment injury fund and you cannot receive employment injury, but you can receive sickness benefit.
Yes. Somebody here, Adriana, I'm not sure what Adriana is asking. Okay, what else? But somebody here, they want to get your number. And I tell you something, Mr. Strickland is doing this free of cost. He tells me, Marcia, I'm happy to do this. As Marsha was saying, they do it. You know, we love Barbados and they're serving. And so I know that we'll talk off air and, how we can, because they still have a lot of questions. People, stick around as well, sir. Because
I'm going to stick around. I'm going to stick around.
Let me bring Miss Marsha
in. Bring her in. Bring her in, please.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I'm available during the question and answer. To further, but I know that there can be those who would want to ask Marsha questions also. So I'll be available. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm gonna let her say a few words because I know she has something else. I saw her going through her book. So I know she has a couple of more things to say to us, and
please.
I want to apologize. You see, I'm sitting here calm and collected. We're having a myriad of technical issues tonight, okay? And camera, sound, everything in one. And so my microphone is not even connected. I'm using the computer microphone, so we can't do our calls tonight. So you have to type in your calls. I see my phone is ringing, but I can't accept any calls because we're not going to hear. So we're gonna pay attention to the comment sections. Write your questions in for Miss Myrie and also for Mr. Strickland. Okay. Let Miss Myrie say a few words, and then we will. Yes, you're muted, ma'am.
I'm sorry. It would help if I unmute. I was saying I was listening to Mr. Strickland very astutely. I don't think he would remember me, but I remember him because I would have been running around those buildings as a little girl, looking up to these people. Like these people, the old-time civil servant that we had in Barbados was a civil servant who helped people. They used to put people in the car and bring them down like Mr. Strickland is doing. They used to explain the law. Everybody had dignity. They helped people in the community. That is the old civil service that we had in Barbados. And in rebuilding our country, all of this is what we have to pay attention to. We have to call a thing in Barbados. But what I was looking for in my book, because I love books, everybody that knows me knows that. This book is called The Sociology of Slavery. And people are like, oh, why you keep talking about slavery? But to understand everything that is happening in our society right now, we have to understand that it comes from our past. It comes down. So people would know the quote by Barrow that if you want justice, you stay out of the law court. But what people may not know is, where does that come from? What is it grounded in? At one point in our history, the law court in Barbados was used to disenfranchise Black people, right? So in this book by Orlando Patterson, he's talking and thinking through the court, and he's taking quotations from people back in the 1700s. And two of the quotations about the courts, I'm just going to read them quickly. He says, I know of nothing in the West Indies so shocking to humanity and so disgusting to individuals as the savage and indecent manner in which the trial of slaves is conducted. And the second one says, what astounded me beyond measure was that the judges became evidence without being sworn, and the jury, although sworn to decide according to evidence in every instance, gave a verdict without hearing a witness upon oath upon the subject of their decision. Now, when we think of the reality that the law court in Barbados is an important part of the mechanism of dealing with what we are seeing in the society now, right? Not when the crimes happen. Before that, many of the families, again, the ones that we're talking about now, bring your children, see something, say something. They're seeing something and they're saying something, but then they come into that court system that Orlando Patterson is talking about. Because the family court in Barbados is not separate. It's one judicature, right? And it doesn't function to assist Black people. And again, that is not a secret that I am telling on the Marcia Week show. Errol Barrow said it, Patterson said it. There are several other authors who say it in the Caribbean. So I saw one of the comments where somebody was saying family court in Barbados has support services. Family court in Barbados is supposed to have support services, but it really doesn't, because the support services tie back into the same services that we were talking about earlier tonight that don't work. The welfare department, the child care board. So you can actually have a magistrate, and this happened in a case that I am dealing with now in real time, where the judge sends and asks for a report, and the welfare send back and say, we sent a report already and we don't think nothing changed. We're asking for another report for. These are things that happen. Now, are they inundated? Maybe. But if they're inundated, the solution can't be to say, if the judge asks again, we're not sending another report. If we have money enough in Barbados and we have resources enough in Barbados to be giving away land, right? It means that when a person needs a report to be able to have proper intervention in a family matter, we should be writing back and saying we don't have the time. To tie what I've been talking to what Mr. Strickland was talking about, because I know the opposition is awake now and astute. I know y'all can walk and chew gum, but to tie the two things together, you now have contract workers in the welfare department, right? That never used to happen before. Whether it should happen or should not happen, the point that I am making is, how have these things affected the level of social services that we need in Barbados? If you're going to tell a person you're now a contract welfare officer, how does that change the checks and balances? How does that change that person's ability to feel like they can go into the society, make a contribution, intervene in a complex case? These things are not separate. They're all together. Our society is not breaking down from the level of the street gang. Our society is breaking down from the level of the top and the middle. And that is why we're seeing the breakdown of the society. When I say somebody is asking what is a welfare contract, I'm saying that the welfare officers, some of them are contractual. So the same way that somebody was asking just now about the drainage workers and that kind of thing, a whole slew of workers that the government has brought and they're working on contract. What I'm saying is that is also pertaining to other departments that we may not be thinking about in the same way. And I'm asking, what is the implication of that on the power that these individuals have? When we think about benefits, because again, like I said, it's not that families don't want to intervene, but there are still some people in Barbados who every day that they take out to go to court, they don't get paid for, right? Every day that they have to take a child to an appointment, they don't get paid for. So when we're talking about benefits and welfare benefits and that kind of thing, in Canada, we have something called family leave. You can take a couple of days, 3 days, 5 days, if you have to deal with your family, your child, whatever the case may be. Does Barbados have something like that? Are we going to put something like that in place? If we are asking for the parents.
No, I understand that.
Just hang on. We have a caller here. Okay. Good night, caller. We got something to work out. So
I was saying was to get money from disability. My son is schizophrenic, he cannot work. I stand apart ever since I ain't hear nothing.
Can you hear her?
Certificates.
Can you repeat the question? Your son is schizophrenic, cannot work, and
I have 12 certificates, and I said it at national insurance. And they're here at 10 yet. They said they've been giving money, and now you hear nothing. I went fill up forms and everything.
Yes, Mr. Strickland. Any response to that? Oh, we're not hearing. Mr. Strickland, you're muted.
Hello? Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry with that. One, I am retired, Miss Murray, and therefore, no, I say I am retired. So, but what I can say to you is that there is a backup, and a very big backup in the National Insurance Department.
But
it's a department I love dearly, but I have to speak the truth, because as I speak right now, you have applications in for old age pensions, which would have been in 3 months ago. But the claims for the month of April, in other words, person who reached the age of 67 in this month, April, few, if any of them, have started to be processed. That's the reality. So you have individuals who have mortgages, they have all kinds of things, and they are anxiously waiting to access their pension. This claim you're speaking about, I believe, is an invalidity claim, and therefore that process is a bit longer, in that some person has to be assigned to visit that individual. If it's your son, to visit him.
You sent in the form? How long ago you sent in the form?
I sent the form earlier. This nearly 6 months.
6 months?
6 months?
Okay. So the first was good to mention because
Marcia. Okay. Could you, Marcia, could you get the person's information and pass it to me off air?
Yes, I will.
I will seek to intervene in this case, because you asked earlier for my telephone number. Marcia, I spend hours on the phone with persons during the day, sometimes an hour and a half with one person. And I still, even though I'm retired from national insurance, I am still very much thing. So I'll seek to intervene for this person. You know what I'm saying? But as I said, that claim has to be a claim for invalidity and not disability, because disability arises out of an injury on the job. Invalidity relates to any illness that a person has. Okay, but then
oh, she says it's invalidity. But let me ask schizophrenia. I want to go to Miss Myrie on this, you know, mental health. You know, I'm wondering if it because it's that. I'm wondering why. I'm just wondering, you know, if that there's a delay. We don't really see that as a real sickness. You
everything.
You did everything already. Well, thank you, caller. You can listen to the rest of the program. Miss Myrie is going to speak to the whole issue of mental health, and I'm going to pass your number on to Mr. Strickland. Thank you for calling.
Thank you too.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Now, this is the magic, Marcia, in victim-centered services, which is how I practice. I don't practice from a service-defined role. I practice victim-centered services. So in listening to that lady, we had a list that we were going through earlier with where we need social workers in Barbados. Does the NISSS have a social worker or 2 or 4? Because if you are processing an invalidity benefit for a young man who has schizophrenia, you are taking care somewhat of his financial needs. But what is he going to do every day from 8 to 12 o'clock, 24 hours, 24/7? What are we going to put him to do? The money is one part of it, but then he needs other programming. He needs support so that, as my granny used to say, the devil don't find work for idle hands. So how are we dealing with that? Because here we see now his entry point into the system is the NISSS. But what do we do with him from there? And if then we find him in another couple of months in unsavory company or doing unsavory things, how do we blame his mother? That is our system that we set up in this country that is not working. Because as they process that benefit, there's somebody who has to take care of the non-financial aspect of that case. Who does that, Mr. Strickland? Who does that?
Unfortunately, there's no one. Actually, you know, I remember because I was retired, I went back and I left in June of 2023. And while there, I think it was in March of 2023, I was part of a supervisory meeting. And based on what was being said, I said that they need to engage the staff in training in respect of the culture of the department, because we have, as I said to them, that we are drawing our staff members right across the board out of a very uncaring society. There are those who were born with 1, 2 cars in a car park who do not understand Social Security, and NISSS social is in there, and therefore there are individuals that will come in and they have a myriad of mental issues, and therefore staff do not sometimes seem to understand, and some of them may not even care what that person is dealing with. And if you're going to effectively deal with that person, you must have an idea, you must understand to a large extent what they're going through before you start to engage them in respect of the claim. You want to say,
yeah,
and therefore there's a lack of training.
I may just ask you to pause there. We have a caller on the line. Good night, caller. Thank you for calling the Marcia Week Show. How can we help you tonight?
Good night to the loyal opposition, and good night to Mr. Strickland and Myrie. Good night to you, lady, and James.
Yes.
I first of all, I have a question. But I once said I agree with what Mr. Strickland was just saying. And I find that people that have mental challenges, they are not really dealt with in the way that they should be dealt with when you go into the NISS. Because I would like to suggest, and then Mr. Strickland would agree with me, and the lady as well, that perhaps the staff in there needs to be trained. And if they are trained in dealing with people with mental challenges, and as in how to talk with them and how to communicate with them so they can better assist them and help them in whatever area they come to seek their benefit or to get something done in there. Once they are trained how to deal with these people, perhaps they will see some kind of progress being made. But until then, I believe why they act such in a doggish way, because they are not trained and they don't know how to deal with these people. It's like, I can't handle you, so you know.
Yeah.
And that person basically kind of loses out. So my question is to Miss Myrie, and Mr. Strickland can answer if he cares to. The issue of the contract workers, I would have typed in that it was specifically meaning the drainage workers. And I find that I know of a situation that individual would have gone around on the job, and this is still working for government. I want to know how they can handle that, how that can be best dealt with as far as getting something out of the NIS, because right now, a lot of them are home, you know, and the drains need to be clean. And they're working for government, they're working for the government of Barbados, they're working for the roads, you know, they're not working for themselves. So, but they're contracted through the government entity. So,
Yes.
how can that be fixed so those people won't be left hanging out in the lane? That would be my question to you all. I will put down and keep up the good work, Marcia. God bless you. God bless the loyal opposition.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Who's quite? I think that's more of Mr. Strickland's question. I think, Miss Mary.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go very quickly
Yeah. So the
on that
phone is
one.
ringing.
I can imagine that. Now, unfortunately, the major trade unions, I would say the major trade unions, that being the NUPW and the Barbados Workers Union, not the Unity Workers Union Party, have colluded with government to allow a lot of things to happen. And I make no apologies for that. Now, what I would refer to as the ash workers. No, we had ash workers in Barbados working for that period of time. No national insurance was ever taken from them. The Honorable Thorne, from the Barbados Workers Union, she sat and allowed those persons not to be paying national insurance. When they were laid off, I think it was on the 1st of April 2022, it meant that they, in order to qualify for unemployment, they would have had to have at least 20 weeks between July 2021 and December 2021. The government of Barbados went and paid both the employee and the employer's portion of national insurance so that those workers could get unemployment benefits for 6 months. So while on one hand, while they were working, they were not qualified to be paying contributions.
Right.
But then when they were laid off, then they were unpaid for them. So I'm saying that unfortunately, the government of Barbados still has those practices, as Ms. Mary was indicating, with the welfare department, where you have contract workers where no nationals being taken out. They control the hours they work, they control lunch hours, all of those things, but yet they determine that these people are contract workers and they're self-employed.
Yes.
It is not legal, it's not fair.
Yeah. But Miss Myrie, I would encourage you, if you could just write down any thoughts you have, and I know you're very good at checking the comments or any questions. But the calls are coming in. So let me just take this call, please. Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the Marcia Week show. How can we help you tonight, sir? Hello? Hello?
Hello. Good
Oh,
night.
good. Yes. Good night. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The first question is to Miss Marcia.
Yes.
Yeah. I would like to know. I was minding my business, but I would like to know what is her opinion of this new development since the combining child care board, the home health, along with there's another organization there I can't remember offhand under Mr. Kurt Humphrey. But before you answer, I would like to put down a listen. Now to Mr. Strickland, because they haven't made it clear to these people who are working. The other one was elderly care. The other question I'd like to pose to Mr. Strickland. Mr. Strickland, since this is a way back, and I know you would remember the national insurance. Now, I could remember that when we had servants pay, the employer used to contribute a portion of the money to servants pay. Then when Tom Mullins was being elected, Tom Mullins took back the part that the employers had used to pay, where the worker received a lesser benefit because the employer used to contribute a part of the money, and the contribute of the employee was also contributed. Would you remember anything about this, and can you explain it to me? Because as a former trade union member, I had to deal with many cases, and I can remember instead of the employee receiving a benefit when his employee was terminated, you see, and he is looking to a lump sum because the money under Tom Adams, he had taken it back and given it back to the employee. Could you discuss that part to me, or maybe you would have to look at it in another program, because I know you're discussing other things tonight.
Yes.
So I will put down a listen.
Thank you so much, Miss Myrie. First, and then Mr. Strickland.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I saw there was a question that was there on the screen for a very long time, and I was laughing, but I'm gonna answer it. Somebody asked if I feel that enough is being done for people in Barbados. And I wrote on my paper, no, and that's why I run to Canada. I will not be a part of a system where people are ill-treated, unfaired, gaslit, all of the things, and just shut my mouth and pretend that I don't see what I see and know what I know. And so it became uncomfortable to continue to try to operate in the way that I was operating. And I guess people, even when I was leaving, really, I thought I was leaving not to continue this work. But I cannot, if people are suffering, I'm going to do as much as I can do. Every single degree, qualification, everything that I have, Barbados gave it to me. But the difficulty is that when you now use these qualifications and say to Barbados, listen, you got to pull up your socks. This is not 1901. This is not 1835. The way that we are working, we can work. Then people think that you're offensive. They don't want to hear you. So you run to Canada and you come up here. Canada wants to hear you. Canada uses your knowledge to make their society better. And meanwhile, we're at how many murders for the year in Barbados? 17? I mean, it is just surreal. But very quickly, in terms of the question of the merger between Child Care Board, I think it is Welfare Department, and I don't remember what the other state agency is. What I will say is that if we create a merger of what we have now, what we will end up with is a bigger, more solid bureaucracy of uncaringness. And people are talking about training of employees. Can you train a person to be a good human? If somebody comes in front of me to sit down and talk and they don't have food, I look in my lunch bag and I say, you does eat orange? If they come and they don't have shoes, I say, what size? And I look at my thing and I see a pair of shoes that I buy but I don't really like, and I say, listen, you want to carry these long? Can you train a person to have empathy? This is the question that we have to begin to ask ourselves in Barbados. Can you train a person to care? You know, I don't know. I'm leaving that out there for the loyal opposition. What I will say is that for this new entity to work, what we have in Barbados now is service-defined services. That is what it is called. Just like every other, you know, Marcia, you said you're into finance. Finance has its own language, its own way of doing things. So does the social services, right? We feel as if social services in Barbados is just the last thing. You know, you just slap something there. You get them bread and cheese, get them bread and butter. They should be thankful. Social services it also has its own theory. It has its own approach. What we are doing in Barbados now is called service-defined services. So you set up an entity like the welfare department, and you say we offer vouchers for school. We offer vouchers for people whose houses burned down. And, you know, if you're poor, you can come in, you can ask a question, and we can either deal with you or not. There are these three services. Victim-defined services is where we need to move to in Barbados. There's a person that comes and sits in front of you. I am trying to get an invalidity benefit for my son. Okay, tell me a little bit more about you and your son. Where do you live? You know, how can I, you know, what else do you need help with? Do you have enough food in the household? Is your roof leaking? In other words, instead of having an institution that says we do these three things, what you have is an institution where people can walk in and they are safe. What do you need from me? How can I serve you? So the question, the short answer is, if we just amalgamate these things and leave them as service-defined services, it will not work. What we need in Barbados is for poor people, blind people, traumatized people, schizophrenic people to be the ones that are in control of the system. And that is completely new for Barbados. But guess what? It works in Canada. It works in New York. It works in all the places where we are talking about how to get the crime control, how to do these things. They have shifted the model. They don't continue living on the plantation with all the violence and all the upheaval. And every day they're asking, but how we get so? A plantation is a violent place. It was constructed and created out of violence. We can't keep the plantation and then ask why it's violent. It's violent because it is still a plantation. You need people that care. You need people that have done the research. You need people who read. You need people who are willing to do a different thing for a different result.
Thank you, Marsha. I mean, excellent. Let me go to Mrs. Strickland. Mrs. Strickland, the people, I tell you, the phone is just lighting up like they were waiting. You know, we might have to go over a little bit tonight, but go ahead, Mrs. Strickland.
I'm here enjoying Marsha. I don't know what the people. I'm here enjoying Marsha. Now, let me go quickly to the question in respect of severance. I am not certain some of what the person was speaking about in the Tom Adams days and whatever. What I can tell you is, even though it was in those days, I can't remember ever the employee having to contribute towards his or her severance. The employer made the full contribution towards the severance fund. Now, once a person either is laid off for 13 weeks straight or 16 weeks in a 6-month period, or if the job the person does no longer exist, in other words, they become redundant, then that person can make a claim for severance. Now, the employer is responsible for the severance. The employer can apply for a 25% rebate from the severance fund once that employee qualified for severance, because you have situations where sometimes employers may pay money to individuals. It may not be a case where the person qualified for severance or the amount that they pay the individual, so that when the claim for the rebate comes to national insurance, then it means that they may not either get back any money or they may not get back what they pay the employee. So the employer has to know first if the person qualifies for severance. If the employer refuses to, or is unable to pay the severance, then the person will make a claim to national insurance for severance, and the 70 department would instruct the person to write the employer by registered mail applying for their severance. National then you would then await a response. With the response, it may be a case where if the person is unable to pay, they may make a determination that it may not have to go to the severance pay tribunal. So every case may not go to the tribunal, but in many cases they go to the tribunal. You do not have, obviously it's a tribunal, you do not have to have a lawyer. You can represent yourself, or you can have some person represent you. That's where CAS will represent a number of people at that tribunal, and therefore the tribunal's responsibility is to ensure that that person gets full representation, even if the tribunal has to ask the question of the employer on behalf of the employee.
Yes.
If the employer refuses to pay or is unable to pay, then national insurance will pay the severance and then seek to recoup that money from the monies paid to the individual. National will seek to obtain that full amount from the employer. So that's really how it works. But as I said, in respect of what the employer used to pay and whatever else, I am not. But and at this present moment, I don't think it really matters all that much. It's sufficient that at present, the employer make the full contribution on behalf of the employees, and that will be persons who are regular employees and temporary officers, not appointed officers. Appointed officers cannot receive severance, they cannot receive unemployment, nor can they receive sickness benefit.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mrs. Strickland. There's another caller, and anything else, write it down so at the end of the show you'll be able to say that. Good evening, caller. Welcome to the Marcia Week Show. How can we help?
Yes, good evening again. My query is to Miss Myrie.
Yes, ma'am.
I was told that there used to be halfway houses. One was at Carleton, St. Lucie. I can't remember where the other one was. And there was also a private entity. I don't know if she knows if they still function. That's my query.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you for holding on. You've been holding on a long time. Thank you.
Yes, okay,
yes.
You're welcome.
So we will cut the call, and you could just listen. Okay. Thank you so much for your patience.
So I know that what became the debacle of the girls' facility of the government industrial school, in another iteration, I think that used to be some kind of halfway house facility. And then the fire happened at Somerville and it was repurposed. And we all know that it was closed because it became what it became. But I'm going to say again, it is not just a problem of buildings that we have in Barbados, right? So I'm not advocating for us to set up a halfway house in Barbados where children or wards will be stripped naked and put in cells when they become uncontrollable. That just can't be the solution, because what it means is that we end up with residential schools. And I don't know how much people are following what is going on in Canada right now, but residential schools is not what we're asking for. When we're asking for a halfway house for individuals who may be, difficult for their family to manage, what we're really asking for, again, I'm going to say again, is a victim-defined set of services, well-trained individuals who have access to, because I'm tying it all the time to what Mr. Strickland says. If the normal civil servant, not the normal civil servant, the one who is not working within social services, if they get 4 weeks of vacation, I am okay with giving someone who works in a halfway house 8 weeks of vacation, because they need more. When we took away the terms leave from teachers in Barbados, we created the problem that we have in the school system in Barbados now, where the teachers they cannot cope emotionally, mentally. I knew teachers who just inched to that 15-year mark to get that terms leave, to regroup, to go away, to sit down, to lie down, to talk to a therapist. When we took that away, we made our school system one where we had completely overwhelmed teachers who cannot cope. And we didn't give them back anything. And the students, like I said, are more complex now than they were when I was back in the system all those years ago. These are the things that when I think of a minister of social transformation, when I think of a minister of home affairs, when I think of a crime intervention program, these are the things that I think of. It is not rocket science. It is not rocket science, right? We need the pieces in Barbados to be connected. Right now, they're not connected. And what we're doing is we are blaming the youngest, most vulnerable members of the society that we have failed. I am sorry, but that is the way I see it. Those young boys that are out there running up and down, and young girls who are running up and down without a purpose. We did that. We collectively as a society did that. The civil servants did that. Every child care officer who looked the other way did that. Every welfare officer who looked the other way did that. The fact that NISSS doesn't have a social worker did that. The fact that the police department in Barbados doesn't have a social worker did that. Do not blame the parents. Let's get serious about what is happening in Barbados. Let's get clear, because we need to stop hemorrhaging life. We are hemorrhaging life. And guess what? It's not just the lives that are dying in the street that we are hemorrhaging. It is the people who have lost hope. Because we're not in those homicide statistics, we are not counting the suicides. If we add the suicides to them, if we add all the young people, like I said, who have lost a father, a brother, a neighbor, a mother in this violence, we really get a sense of the picture of what is happening. Marcia, you don't have to pay me. I will fix it for free. What is going on in Barbados cannot keep going on. It is a problem.
Yes. Thank you so much. We have a caller on the line. Good night, caller. Welcome to the Marcia Week Show.
Yes, hi. Good night to the panel, and especially Lady Myrie. What I would want to touch on is three things. Mental health in Barbados continues to be a mockery, where essential services are not timely given around the parishes, and I have proof to that even from when I was going to school. I can call names, but I wouldn't call names for sensitivity. There were, and Marsha would know who I'm talking about. They were a group of children who really came from a family that what you would call had mental, mental challenges, and they were beaten and instead of being adequately assisted, so that is one thing. The other is, I'm not calling the specific case, but I think that poor evidence procedure by police officers in Barbados is actually assisting the blockades to access to justice. I am not calling the specific case, but sometimes a person being made feel to be innocent is not necessarily so. It is sometimes because of poor evidence procedure or poor intel gathering. And the last thing is the issue of I think they were talking about mediation and social workers and stuff, but it would probably piggyback on the first. I was saying of issues in Barbados, sometimes even who they live with. I could call a district in St. Lucie, but I would not do it because of sensitivity. Even who sometimes the people live with, they themselves need guidance to even mediate care and stuff like that. So how, if you can see so much of these similar situations in one parish alone, you don't tell me that they're not. And I know I can go parish by parish because I'm very, very familiar with communities around the country. And there are a myriad of communities from that have people who, have like mental health challenges and stuff. And they lack adequate social work to continue and follow up with them all the time. I don't want to talk too long, maybe for interaction.
Yes, but thank you so much for the caller for the call, and just we're going to close off the call, and you can just listen. Okay, thank you so much, Miss Myrie.
Sure.
No, I mean, what the caller is saying is valid. In every district, those of us who work in these areas, whether we're in civil society, wherever we are, we know the problem spots. We know the families. I mean, all of these things are open secrets in Barbados. But I have a client, for example, who was taken by the police from her home, placed in protective care because of the level of violence she was facing at her home. And they left a 2-year-old girl child in the care of her perpetrator. And this is 5 years now that woman has been trying to get that child back from the perpetrator. And she can't get it back. So by the time that child now becomes a 13-year-old ripping up a secondary school in Barbados, we will look at her and we will say, hey, well, she gets so... We made her like that because we left her in the seat of abuse, in the seat of uncare. We do this, and I know people that start to come for me, don't start to come for me because I don't care if the abuser is a man, a woman, a child, a dog, a cat. I don't care. We have abusive people in our society, and our social services are not dealing with them. So what do we have? Young people who come out the other end completely traumatized. They cannot cope with their lives, right? And then they get to 16. We do not realize that they're not coping. We don't realize that when they go and sit down under the time tree and play music and fet all day, it's because they can't do anything else. They don't have the capacity to be functional members of the society. And then we blame them. It's not them to blame. We're the ones who didn't give them the services, the care, the support, who did not remove them. I have a client who a child care officer tell her, well, let me tell you something, boy. That man that you're dealing with is a madman. I frightened for he. I can close this case. Not because there wasn't evidence enough. The mother went to the child care board. The child care board officer told her them closing the case because them frightened. What if the child care officer that got a free car, a good salary, access to the police, access to the probation department frightened? What the poor mother supposed to do? She ain't supposed to be frightened too. Mm-hmm. Barbados, let me realize what is that going on. I will blame the parents when the system starts to work, because the system has to do more than the parents in Barbados are able to do. If the child care officers frightened, them trained. The average social worker in Barbados has a bachelor's degree. They have gone through training. The average mother had a child. She had a child. She doesn't have training. So if them frightened, what they left the mothers of Barbados to do?
Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness. That's why we end up, we keep praying for the young child at the hospital, folks. We don't want to wake up tomorrow morning and hear that that child is gone. I don't think we can manage it. We have a caller on the line. Good night, caller. Welcome to the Marcia Week Show.
Yes, good night, Marcia. Thank you for having me.
Yes,
my question is for Mr. Strickland. If a person has been receiving invalidity benefit for the last 17 years due to an autoimmune condition, on approaching 67, do they have to apply for old age pension, or is the switch automatic? I was told in the past that it would be the greater of the two, whichever is the greater of the two pensions it would be. But I want to know if they have to apply on approaching 67, if they have to apply for the old age pension, or does it automatically happen, seeing that they already received the invalidity for the last 17 years? If Mr. Strickland wants to answer that, then I have one other question, or should I just ask the other question?
Just hold and let him answer that. Go ahead, Mr. Strickland. As brief as possible.
That's an easy answer. The calculation of the invalidity pension is basically the same as old age pension. So the person does not have to apply for an old age pension. It will automatically convert. There's not a grade of the greater of the two. It will be the same amount. So that if you're receiving a check, all that, well, there may be a slight delay in that. For argument's sake, your 67th birthday may be in the middle of a pension period, 4-week pension period. So you may be paid up to your birthday as invalidity, and then you will need to be paid for the remaining of that period of old age pension. So you may have to wait for the next pension period to get that part along with, and it continues. So the only difference that you will see that on the check would be the name changing from invalidity the old age pension because the color of the check is going to be the same and the amount on the check is going to be the same.
Well, it's direct deposit now, anyhow. But
Whether
so
direct deposit, same
I
difference.
was told that many years ago, as you said, just said that it would be the two are this, about the same. The calculation is about the same.
Yeah.
My next question, my next question now, because I do recall reading on the NIS websites, this is some time back, it was still called NIS, not NISS, that the person could receive, a person can receive both, and both invalidity and old age. And my question is, what, if any, are the terms and conditions for receiving both? Because it did say something about terms and conditions.
A person cannot receive invalidity. Sorry. A person cannot receive invalidity and old age pension at the same time. A person might have been in receipt of a disability pension. In other words, they were injured on the job and they're receiving disability. When they reach pensionable age, they will apply for an old age contributory pension and they can get a disability pension and an old age contributory pension, but not an invalidity pension and an old age. No, you can't get both.
It is the disability and the old age.
Old age.
But this is a disability arises out of an injury on the job.
On the job, yeah.
Yes, understood. And the invalidity is a condition.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so very much, Mr.
Yes.
Strickland.
Thank you. Thank you so much for calling.
And very quickly, you can only receive a disability pension if you go to the doctor, you are sent to the doctor, and the doctor gives you a percentage of 30% or more. Under 30% will be a disability grant, which I will deal with in my next program.
Yes. This is great. This is great stuff. Miss Myrie and Mr. Strickland, we're actually helping people, and I just love that. Let me just say, and I'm here watching the phone, but it's 10 o'clock, and I did advertise. You would have seen 3 pastors that I had on my flyer, which I didn't get to touch because honestly I was really broke. I was thrown off by this thing with Nelson Street, and I wasn't sure what happened to the child. But I want to say that I'm hoping that on Friday I'll be able to go into that a little bit more. But I just wanted to respectfully ask the spiritual advisors that are, I don't know if these people are paid. I don't know. I know that they were appointed by the Prime Minister, and I know that they are legitimate pastors, and are doing great work in the community. But we're not hearing you. We're not hearing you. We're not hearing your voices. We don't know. Do you give advice to the Prime Minister? Right now, there's a lot of fear in this country. Our young people are afraid. Our children are dying. And I don't understand. And so I want to speak on that for the next time that we come together on Friday. And this is no disrespect, but we want to know what is that you're doing. The pastors who prayed over the Prime Minister, some washed their feet and anointed her feet and so on. Are you holding the Prime Minister accountable? And in essence, this is going out to the church. Are you holding this government accountable? A lot of you endorse this government in many different ways. And I think it's only fair to ask the advisors, what are you saying right now? We need to hear from you. We'll continue this discussion next time that we come together, which is going to be on Friday. But I want to just allow the panelists tonight, or guests, to give their final comments. I'm just double checking that I've covered everybody here. Yeah. So yes. Well, so let Mr. Strickland, you want to go first, and then
ladies first.
Ladies first. Okay, ladies first.
Ladies first.
Okay, Miss Myrie.
I don't know about the ladies first, but I will give way to age. Let's put it that way. So
just
just 2 points that I want to leave. There's a comment in the chat which says mental health is not just for the poor, it's for all of us. And I want to make sure that we're very clear on that in Barbados, because while we're having a conversation about mental health, and let me also say the Mental Health Act in Barbados is completely archaic. You cannot use the Mental Health Act in Barbados to get mental health care for a person who needs mental health care. The Mental Health Act in Barbados is more about maintaining property, right? It doesn't say, how can I help this person? How can I help this son who has a diagnosis of schizophrenia, but he's now an adult, he's not going on his medication? What can the state do? What can I do? The Mental Health Act in Barbados is completely archaic. It's another one of the pieces of legislation that needs to be fixed. But mental health is for all of us. And I don't want us to only think about mental health as something you're born with or not. Mental health is a spectrum. And some days we can have it, and some days we can't have it, and we move all through that spectrum. And I think we need to start to think of it in that way, because again, that can govern our social services response. So in Canada, that's how we deal with mental health. And the police officers who respond are commanded to deal with it in that way. They don't treat one set of people this way and another set of people this way. If somebody runs onto the train track, they want to do themselves damage, whatever, there's a protocol. And the protocol is to save life. So maybe it's not a train track in Barbados, maybe it's the sea. But we need a protocol, and the protocol always has to be to save life. This is what I'm talking about, our system changing. The way that we approach these issues have to change for something different to be done. The final thing that I'm going to say, there's a comment that said, Marsha, maybe the difference is that you are in a developed society and we're still a developing society. No, I'll tell you what the difference is. The difference is that we are still dealing with undeserving and deserving people like we used to do in a plantation. So the people who had and the white people were seen as deserving. And we were supposed to roll over to make their lives better, to make sure they had all the things they needed to prosper and that kind of thing. The Black people like us, the slaves, were seen as undeserving. Mm-hmm. So when we had to go and ask for a little help, a little support, we were subjugated. We did make shame. Go for here, dog. Go work. And that is still what we are doing to today. It is not a problem of developed and developing. It is a problem of deserving and undeserving. Over to you, Mr. Strickland.
I love that. Very well said. But Mr. Strickland, somebody have a big question, and he has to ask you this question. So, I'm going to let the question come through. Okay, just hang on. And 1 second. Okay, you can speak while I wait for it to.
I really want to thank God for you, Marsha, tonight. There's not much I can say. More I can say. What I can say is that the question earlier in respect of halfway house, yes, there was one at Colleton, St. Peter, and then one somewhere in St. George. Both of them are now abandoned. The problem was at that time that there were neighbors in the community did not want those halfway houses in their community, and that's part of our system, our society. Sorry, that we want things done, but do it somewhere else. You want something not to make us uncomfortable, and therefore, I really want to say that it has been a pleasure being on the program to provide information. I consider myself.
Mr. Strickland, if I could just ask you to hold that thought there. I hate to disturb you like that, but he's right back on. We finally got through to him. Caller, go. Welcome to the Marcia Week Show. Go right ahead. Be very, very quick with your question.
Good night,
yes, good night.
Pensioners, all those pensioners are supposed to get an increase in salary from January. What has happened to that?
An increase in salary?
Increase in pension.
Or pensions, okay. There was a statutory, I think Senator Walters alluded to this in his presentation. For 2006, with pension reform, there was supposed to be a statutory increase in pensions every year. For a number of years, that was so. I think it was thrown out off to some extent when this government took over, because they gave a very large increase to pensioners as a political gimmick. I do thank God for the pensioners who would have got it, but I'm saying that they got a very large increase, and as a result, since then, it has not been a yearly increase, so that but it said it was a statutory from 2006, when not only the pensions would rise every year by a cost of living and amount, also there was a raise in the contribution rate and also in the maximum earnings. So even though the maximum earnings changed this year, the pensioners, including myself, we did not get an increase. You know what I'm saying? But it said a lot of this was affected through the increase that was given in 2019 or 2018, 2019 when 2018 when the government changed.
Okay. Is that clear, sir?
I barely hear him, man.
All right. Tell you what.
No.
So what we will talk after. Okay.
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 Yes. Thank you.
All right.
Yes. All right. So we have a couple numbers there for you, Mr. Strickland. So you were giving your final comment. No, we're not going to take any more. Can't take any more. Yes.
What I was saying to MARSHA, because this is the MARSHA. There, those of us are like Jeremiah. Jeremiah, he said, "I'm not going to say anything," but it was like fire shut up in his bones. He had to open his mouth. While you would have gone to Canada, I have stuck here. I have remained here, and I'm really appreciative that you are doing the job you are doing for Barbados there. And I will continue along with Madam Principal to do what we do here to ensure that Barbadians who others consider to be undeserving will receive the kind of information that they are entitled to, because that is what we were born for. That is what God did for us, and we will continue to do. So, Marcia, keep the good work up along with the loyal opposition.
Absolutely. And I just saw a comment there just before you finish, Marcia, sorry. I will consult for Barbados anytime. However, I will never accept a cent from the government of Barbados. But if they want me to consult for them, there's a mechanism set up here at my workplace, many of the workplaces in the diaspora. I can actually take time and I can come back and I can consult for my country free of cost. But I will never accept money from the government of Barbados to consult, because just like how they fire me when I open my mouth about the government industrial school, they will fire me again. So they can leave me attached to my employer here in Canada, and I will come back and I will work for the people of Barbados for free. Because if it's right, it's right. And if it's wrong, it's wrong. And I have to be able to say that. But I will never, ever forget the little 2x4 island where I have been educated to become the woman I am today. And when I step in any room, anywhere in the world, they shut their mouth and they listen to me. Barbados did that for me. I left Barbados, but I still got a birth certificate, a passport, and a country that I love. They ain't gonna get rid of me. I'm here.
Wow, I tell her that's why she's Marsha, I'm Marcia. And it's the same name, because this is what I told my husband. I said, if I'm ever going to do anything for Barbados, I don't want any money. I just want to serve. That's the truth. I just want to serve. I don't want to be tied to this, and I just want to serve. And I really, really love that. Listen, guys, this has been very impactful. I was so messed up at the beginning of the show. Marsha knew that she was supposed to come at the end. I said, no, come at the beginning. Come and help me here deal with this situation. But I want to thank everybody for being on this evening. Dr. Tull was not able to make it on this evening because of the nature of what he was going to talk about, and then what we're dealing with in the nation. So we put that off for another night, because I know I advertised that Dr. Tull would be on dealing with computer stuff and censorship and those kind of things. We'll deal with that another time. I want to thank Mr. Senator Ryan Walters, who did such a phenomenal job this evening in breaking everything down to us in terms of the economics and prices and all of that. That was fantastic. And of course, Mr. Strickland and Miss Mary, wonderful. In Jamaica, we say it feel like a good plate of food, good cooking food tonight. Okay, thank you so much. And remember, stay prayerful. We're trying to get some young people on Friday, some children to come on to talk to us about what they're feeling. What's happening with all that's happening in Barbados. Okay, so we look forward to seeing you. Thank you, Dave. God bless. And I think he has something here for us. Go ahead, Dave. Thank you so much, Barbados. God bless you.
God bless you too.
Yeah. Whoa. You got to get down on your knees now and say a prayer for the nation. Oh yeah. Would you join with me? Why don't you say a prayer for the nation? Yeah. In Jesus' name, God save us, please. What happened to those days? The days that I remember, when we taught love, respect, and sharing with each other. Materialism is now what we teach our children. The ways of God seems rejected and forgotten. But I pray that we would arise and open up our eyes and against this evil fight. For love of country, you might come on and say a prayer for the nation. Yeah. Would you join with me? Why don't you say a prayer for the nation? Yeah. In Jesus' name, God save us, please. Oh, we need to pray against all immorality, philosophies and lifestyles that destroy marriage and family. Pray for our children against abuse and perversion, against injustice that destroy our moral foundation. And I pray that we would arise and open up our eyes and against this evil fight. For love of country and I come on and say a prayer for the nation. Yeah. Would you join with me?